Government. We have attained a quorum with Vice Chair Councilman Derek Green, Councilwoman Helen Gim, and Councilman Curtis Jones, and myself, Bill Greenlee. Ms. Marconi, will you please read the title of our bill before us today?
Bill number 180649, an ordinance amending Title IX of the Philadelphia Code entitled Regulation of Businesses, Trades, and Professions by adding a new chapter to require certain covered employers to provide fair workweek employment standards for certain employees, including but not limited to reasonable notice of schedules, rest time between shifts, and opportunities for additional hours, and providing for enforcement and penalties, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Before we call our first witness, I want to recognize the sponsor of the bill, Councilwoman Gim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you all for being here today. I wanted to shout out a couple of people who are here to join us. I want to thank Congressman Bob Brady. I want to thank Jerry Jordan and Hillary Leonardopoulos of the PFT, Mary Catherine Ricker, who's Executive Vice President of AFT. I want to thank President Wendell Young of USCW, Jed Dodd and Dave Ingersoll, who's the new General Chair of Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Workers, Mick Barrett, General Chairman of the Commuter Rail System, Anthony Sassa, Pennsylvania Federation of Teamsters, President Pat Eiding from the AFL-CIO, President Fred Wright, District Council 47, President Maureen May of PASNAP, Cecily Harwitt, and Shalwa Ogameffen, tireless organizers at 1PA, and so many of our partners. So I want to thank everybody for being out here, because in a time of seeming global madness, we have today a chance to do something decent, good, and bold in our city. And that's win a fair work week for the 100,000 plus service workers in our city who deserve a fighting chance. The push for a fair work week began over a year ago when dozens of organizations came together to form the Fair Work Week PHL Coalition, driven by the real stories of working Philadelphians. I heard from families about the ways that their unstable schedules hurt them, their families, and their children.
Councilwoman, please. I know some of you think you're speaking low, but when 40 people speak low, it ain't low no more. Okay? So please, if you need to have any conversation, please go outside in the hallway, because it's hard for us to hear and for the stenographer to take the wording down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I heard from working moms who incurred childcare costs or lost childcare subsidies because their shifts and paychecks changed so drastically from week to week. I heard from a college student who has had to choose between staying in school or working at the job that paid for that school and had to drop out. I heard from families who can't predict their rent or put food on the table because they don't know how many hours they'll work or when their shifts will get cut. And so we've heard your stories, we've listened, because this is the people's house. And over the past 10 months, I've driven a robust engagement process, meeting with more than 80 businesses, held business, labor, and community roundtables, and we've changed, edited, and evolved this bill to its current state. I want to thank the many business leaders in this room, Uncle Bobby's, Cake Life, so many more, who support this bill because they know that caring for their employees is not only good for workers, it's good for business. Businesses have not only been heard, they've been at the table. And the dozens of amendments before this committee reflects the sincere respect, engagement, and collaboration that our office has had from the start. But today, it's time. In this city, in our city, in a city of liberty and on whose grounds democracy was born, poverty is not going to be inevitable for our people. Poverty is not inevitable. Poverty is manufactured. And we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, or we can do something about it. And today, we're going to choose to do something about it. As a city council, we can't raise the minimum wage in this city, though we sure as heck would. But we can make sure the folks making the lowest wages have schedules and hours that they can count on. I want to thank this committee chairman, Bill Greenlee, who has championed labor rights for working people in Philadelphia throughout his tenure. I want to thank my 8 colleagues, including Councilman Jones and Councilwoman Maria Quinones-Sanchez, who are here, who co-sponsored this bill, and who are eager to see it have its fair shot on the floor. And I also thank my committee members with whom we've met and worked with to move this bill out of committee. So we are here today to say yes. Yes to working families, yes to smart business, yes to our people. We are here on your side. We thank you for your stories. It's time for a fair work in our city. Let's get started.
Thank you, Councilwoman. You sure know how to draw a crowd, I'll give you that. The record will please reflect Councilman O, a member of the committee, is present, and also Councilwoman Reynolds Brown and Councilwoman Quinones-Sanchez. If there are no other comments at this present, if there are no other comments at this present time, please, Ms. Marconi, our first witness, please.
Congressman Robert Brady.
Good afternoon, Congressman. Thank you for coming. Please identify yourself and proceed. We all know you, but go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman, for inviting me here and for having this committee hearing. And thank you, Councilor Jin, for introducing this bill. And my councilman, Councilman Jones, Councilman O, Councilman Green, Council Lady, how are you, Quinones, and also Blondell Reynolds Brown. Thank you. I sat in Billy Greenlee's seat. That's no indication. Don't mean anything. He just let me sit there. But I also have a statement that I would ask if the Sergeant Arms would pass it out. Used to be my job to do this, many years ago. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have a letter that I sent to every council person expressing my support for this bill. I'm proud to have worked for decades to ensure that Philadelphia is a working town. I sit before you today to express my full support for the fair scheduling bill introduced by Councilwoman Jin, Heenan, Greenlee, Quinones, Sanchez, Squilla, Johnson, Blackwell, and Jones. Bill 10649 would provide basic protections to service sector workers across our city whose pay is too low, much too low as it exists today, and who cannot support their families because of how unpredictable and unstable work schedules can be. Every working person should have a fair work week, reliable hours at decent pay, so we can care and support our families and build thriving communities. Rather than understanding the real lives of working people, too many employers, especially big corporations, have been treating employees as a cost to be contained, rather than as the people who drive their success. As a fair work week at decent pay with enough reliable hours is key to working people being able to care for and support their families, keeping healthy and build thriving communities. This bill provides truly basic protection that all workers should have. Workers should have advance notice of their schedules. Workers should have the ability to rest, care for themselves, and care for their families between shifts. Let me be clear, on-call scheduling is abusive. Workers should be compensated for the last-minute scheduling changes. Workers should have access to more hours in a Commonwealth that refuses to raise the minimum wage. New hours helps lift our brothers and sisters out of poverty. This is a common-sense legislation. It is our responsibility as lawmakers to guarantee protection that many of us take for granted. This bill is also good business. Many of our small businesses thrive because of their commitment to fair work week standards, and many corporations are already adopting many of the provisions in this bill. Studies have shown that when workers have a fair work week, profits, productivity, and retention will go up. While Seattle, San Francisco, New York, San Jose, and the state of Oregon have already beat us to the punch, Philadelphia has a responsibility to provide the same basic standards that are provided to workers in these cities. Philadelphia has a unique responsibility to also guarantee hotel workers who experience considerable instability and constant scheduling changes with fair scheduling protections. With this bill, City Council has the opportunity to stand with workers, plain and simple. The legacy of Philadelphia as a working town depends on you. Please stand with me and support Fair Work Week protections for our service sector workers. Mr. Chairman, that's my statement, but I also want to say a few things that need to be said. We have a minimum wage of $7.25. More than half of the states in the United States are higher than that. That's a disgrace in itself, and that's an argument for hopefully some other day. Life is scheduling. Mortgages are scheduled, our rent is scheduled, car payments are scheduled, registrations, licenses are scheduled, insurance, all bills, schools are scheduled. Why not the workplace? Why not the workplace be scheduled? Most important is our families. Our families suffer. And nobody knows better than me that I had to, we have a schedule and they break it constantly down in Washington. I had to work New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, Christmas, had to work Easter. And it's not so much that I got to be there, but I think my family, believe it or not, may miss me when I'm home and want me back home. That should not happen in the city of Philadelphia with the responsibility we have as lawmakers. So again, it's my honor, my pleasure to be here to testify for the men and working people that make this city move. Thank you all. I hope you all do the right thing and pass this bill.
Thank you. Thank you. No questions from committee?
I'll entertain a couple of questions.
Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, did you want to say something? Or
I will have a couple of questions.
of the congressman?
Yes.
Or? Okay, all right, please.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman, for your important voice this morning on an issue that Councilman Gim has been very, very circumspect and thoughtful in traveling down this road. I want to hear your thoughts around collective bargaining agreements. The industry concern that has been brought to the attention of many members of council, and I quote, union employees and employers will both face uncertainty over whether the contract or the ordinance controls. Employers will be subject to contract sanctions if they comply with the law, and with regulatory sanctions if they comply with the collective bargaining agreement. And then union leadership has expressed concerns as well. Seattle, in fact, opted out of the bill around the collective bargaining agreements. So can you just share with us your thoughts and what you believe we should consider as we look at this important issue?
Well, as you all know, I've been involved in many union disputes throughout the city of Philadelphia, and I found that every union member and every representative, every labor leader, every president, vice president, treasurer that's involved with any union is out for the benefit of the working men and women. And if they could put collective bargaining where they can have the scheduling put in, I'm sure that they would, because I'm sure that every union in the city is for that. That would be a good thing to do. That would take it out of your hands, put it in the collective bargaining agreement, that they have a schedule that every worker has. And I think that our unions, for the most part, for the whole part, I'm sure are for that. And if I could be helpful toward them to try to help negotiate that with any of their employees, I will do that too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Chairman. No.
Congressman, again, thank you
Thank you.
for fighting the good fight for Philadelphia and Washington.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you. Ms. Marconi, our first panel, please.
Erlene Bly, Juan Millette, Raymond Ortiz, and Lakeisha Wellings.
Please come up. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Yeah. All right, while they're being seated, if I could have everybody's attention on this, we have an extremely long list of witnesses. We have at least 8 panels, and there might have been more people signed up. What I want everybody to get their point across, but I really ask that you try to be as concise as possible. I also ask that if you have written testimony that you've submitted, and I know a lot of people have, that will be made part of the record. I would just ask that you just not sit there and read that, if you could summarize that. So if you have written testimony, if you could work on that to summarize it. I think about 3 minutes for everybody makes sense. I have a timer here. I will resist using that unless it seems like we're getting way too far in people's testimony. Because again, I want to be fair to people who are sitting there and waiting to testify. So with that, whoever would like to go first, I think Ms. Bly, you were mentioned first. If you just speak right in the microphone, state your name for the record and proceed, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Earlene Bly, and I've been a housekeeper for the past 25 years, and I've been at the Wyndham Historic District for the past 9 years. No matter what hotel you work at, being a housekeeper is hard. Okay, you usually have about 30 minutes to clean each room, that's including the bathroom, no matter what condition it's in. It's physically demanding, and it's one of the most injury-prone jobs in the country. It takes a toll on your body. Believe me, I know. I just had a double hip replacement a few months ago. Okay? One thing I can say about my hotel is that I can leave work when my shift is over. Okay? I'm going to say it one more time. I can leave work when my shift is over. You know, that might sound obvious to you, but these days I spend a lot of time talking to other housekeepers at other hotels throughout the city. I found that many workers don't have the right to leave work when their shift ends. They show up in the morning and they stay until the work is done, no matter what time it is. Sometimes it might not be until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, or even later sometimes. You know, there are women cleaning rooms right now, just a block away from here, who don't know what time they will be leaving tonight. I've talked to mothers who have to pay $1 a minute in late fees from their daycare when they can't get out of work on time. They say let's say you got 2 kids in daycare and you're 30 minutes late to pick them up. That's $60 that you have to pay. Even if you work a little bit of overtime, it's not going to be enough to make up for those late fees, especially when it's 2 or 3 times a week. You know, some hotels might say there's no way to make the fair work week for their business. But why is that? Is at my hotel, workers leave on time and there's no problem. But at other hotels, they can't. It makes no sense to me. Some might argue that hotel workers earn too much money. I mean, come on, that's funny. I mean, that just threw me off, sorry. We don't make that much money. Let's imagine you earn $16 an hour and you get 35 hours, $16 an hour, and you get 35 hours a week. That might put you a step above the lowest paid workers in the city, but you're still only earning $29,000 a year. That's less than half the area median income. According to HUD, that's not just low income, that's considered very low income for our area. The sky is not going to fall if you give workers fair work week protections. It's common sense and it's common decency. You know? Thank you. It's the right thing to do, and I want to thank the leaders on City Council who support this bill for having the vision and courage to do what's right for Philadelphia. Most of us in the service industry, we are Black, we are women, and all of us deserve a fair work week. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Before the next speaker, please let the record reflect that committee members, Councilwoman Gim and Councilman O'Neill are present. Whoever would like to go. Huh? What'd I say? It's only been 25 minutes. I'm really in trouble. Councilwoman Cindy Bass is present. Thank you. Jeez. Please speak right in the microphone and identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Hi, my name is Lakeisha Wheelings. I've lived here in Philadelphia my whole life. I want to thank you for hearing my testimony today because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to attend until just a few days ago because I only get 48 hours advance notice of my schedule from one work week to the next. But I'm glad I could be here today. For the past 12 years, I've worked as a cook at the Philadelphia Marriott downtown, the largest hotel in Pennsylvania. In my kitchen, there's so much work to be done and not enough people to do it. For the past 5 years, occupancy in my hotel has gone up, but the hotel has cut over 100 jobs. The total number of hours worked by the hotel's employees is down 17%. I made $5,000 less in 2017 than I did in 2016 because of reduced hours. Last-minute scheduling may be a good business for my employer, but let me tell you, as an employee, it creates a lot of challenges. My youngest set of twins were 5 years old when I started working at this hotel. My oldest set of twins were 15. It's hard to raise a family with no control over your schedule. Often I'm not home to help them with their homework. I have to get relatives to come help out. Most days I leave for work when they're in school, and I come home when they're asleep. I love my job, I do. And I know that I have to do this to take care of my family, but I've made a lot of sacrifices working in the hotel industry. I've had to apologize to my children for not being able to go on trips with them. Events would come up and I just had to give them money instead of going with them. I've even had to apologize for not being able to tuck them in the bed at night and give them a kiss. I tell them, Mommy had to do this to pay bills. We work hard in Philadelphia. You can see that the city is growing in so many ways. Hotels and tourism are an important part of that, but sometimes it feels like we're not getting ahead. Implementing a fair work week is the way forward for our city. I understand that some in the hotel industry may not think it's fair to ask employers to give workers advance notice of their schedule and access to full-time hours. They may say the hotels can't afford it. But if we're serious about ending poverty in Philadelphia and giving working people a decent life, the city can't afford not to pass this bill. To support me, my coworkers, and 130,000 people working in Philadelphia's service industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Juan Millette. I'm 23 years old, and I come from a family born and raised Philadelphians. My parents got divorced when I was a kid, so I grew up between the Northeast and North Philadelphia. I graduated from Franklin Learning Center, and I've been trying to make ends meet since then with service jobs, just like 130,000 other workers in the city. My first retail job was Forever 21, where I worked full-time. When I told them I was going back to school at Community College of Philadelphia, my manager screamed at me for changing my availability. I was only going to school for 2 days a week, and I already had got 2 days off per week, so I didn't understand what was the problem. But they cut me down to 1 day a week as a punishment, and I couldn't live on 1 day a week, especially making $7.50 an hour. My manager told me they didn't fire people, they just cut them off the schedule. So when I stopped getting put on the schedule, I knew I had to look for a new job. I started working at a small cafe where I work now. My manager texts me on a Sunday night to tell me my hours for the week starting the next day. I can't schedule a doctor's appointment, so I haven't had a physical in 2 years. I wanted to get braces, but I couldn't schedule the appointments to get my cavities filled, so I got Invisalign instead because they were sent to you in the mail. I did that when I was working full-time this summer, and I could afford the $80 a month. But then the owner hired a bunch of more employees, and my hours got slashed. Last week, I wasn't even on the schedule, and I'm a month behind on my payments. They work with me, but I'm up to $2,000 on my credit card bill, and they don't want to work with me anymore. I'm behind on my phone bill, and every time I'm late, they add another fee. I had to borrow money from my family members, and it's a huge burden on my dad, who is supporting the whole family. My mom is disabled, and I want to help her out, but I can't. When I stopped getting enough hours at the cafe, I got a second job at Skechers. But they still only gave me 1 or 2 days a week, and it was different days every time. My manager would say, "You're working Friday," but not tell me the time until the day of. At first, I thought she was just trying to squeeze me in to get more hours, but it kept happening, so I realized that's just how they did the schedule. Having 2 jobs that are constantly changing is scary. If I'm getting my schedule sent to me randomly, I don't know how much I'm going to get paid. I'm stressed out all month because I don't know whether or not I'm going to be able to pay my bills. If I had a fair work week, I'll have so much less stress. I'll be able to go to the doctor, see my friends, and help my mom out. I wouldn't be constantly stressed about all the late fees. I'll be able to focus better in school. I'm in school for theater, and I dream of moving to LA to be an actor, but I can barely pay my bills, yet alone save up to pursue my dreams. This affects so many people I know, like my sister who had worked at Dunkin' Donuts for 10 years without a raise, and my brother who had worked at Rita's. Behind me are signatures from thousands of Philadelphians who have supported this bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sir, please identify yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Raymond Ortiz. I'm a fast food worker in New York City, and I'm a member of Fast Food Justice, an organization advocating for fast food workers in New York City. I want to start by thanking the Philadelphia City Council for hearing my testimony today. Fast Food Justice is a non-profit organization of fast food workers who came together to tackle the workplace and community issues. We have over 2,600 members and continue to grow. I joined the Fast Food Justice and encourage almost my entire store to join as well. While FFJ is a new fast food workers in New York City have been coming together to improve their lives for years. Several years ago, we won legislation that increased the fast food minimum wage from $7.25 to what will be $15 an hour by the end of 2018. Fast food workers also fought, thank you. Fast food workers also fought for a 4-and-1 fair week, which took effect in November of 2017. The Fair Week laws have changed and my co-workers' lives for the better. And that is why I thought it was so important for me to come here from New York City to testify today. Before we had a Fair Week law, our lives were chaotic. We weren't getting schedules in advance, so we could never plan ahead for doctor's appointments, classes, or even making dinner arrangements. I would wait around for a phone call to come into work, and if I didn't get one, I would lose a whole day. Our schedules would change at the last minute, so we never knew how much money we would bring home. We weren't getting enough hours, and we waited. We watched new people get hired, even though we needed those hours. The Fair Week law requires employees to provide our schedules in writing 2 weeks in advance. Pay us our premium pays for last-minute schedule changes, ensure that we get enough rest between shifts, and that the current employees get more hours before new hires are brought on. After the laws were passed, FFJ organizers came to the store and asked workers whether the Fair Week law were being followed, and organized to have work files complaint with the NYC Department of Consumer Affairs. The city agency that enforced the Fair Week laws, I went to DCA with many of my coworkers and we filed complaints about the Fair Week violations. The DCA has been conducting investigations and things have started to change. Because of those Fair Week laws and because of fast food workers that came together to ensure they are being enforced, I can finally schedule my life outside of work. I can make time for doctor's appointments, spend more time with my family. I get my schedule 2 weeks in advance, and I can say no to last-minute shift change. We also have taken a bold step to transform the workers we do into family-sustaining jobs and better communities that we live in. Thank you again for hearing my testimony today. We also successfully implemented Fair Week laws in New York City, and I think also Philadelphia can do it also.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, all right, okay, all right, thank you. Please let the record reflect Councilman Dom is present at the hearing. Ms. Marconi, our next witness, please.
Rich Laser.
Welcome to you both. Ms. Laser, I think you know how this place works, so if you identify yourself and proceed,
Yeah,
I'd
I think I
appreciate
do.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Greenlee and members of the Law and Government Committee. My name is Richard Laser, Deputy Mayor for Labor for Mayor Jim Kenney. I'm joined here today by Sylvie Gallier-Howard, the first Deputy Commerce Director, who is available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to testify on Bill Number 180649, which amends Title IX of the Philadelphia Code to add a new chapter that will require covered employees to provide fair workweek employment standards for their employees. The administration supports the goal of a fair workweek for Philadelphians. We believe that one full-time job should be enough for an individual to provide a life for themselves and their families. Our administration has taken multiple steps to address the issue of systematic poverty in Philadelphia, like expanded pre-K, community schools, the investing in our Office of Workforce Development, and our plan Fueling Philadelphia's Talent Engine. Additionally, we have transmitted to City Council for City Council's consideration legislation that would increase the minimum wage for city employees and the employees of our contractors and subcontractors to $15 an hour over the next several years. Every day, we are working to develop new and more effective ways to help those living in poverty. That is why we agree that a fair work week for retail, food service, and hospitality workers across Philadelphia will advance our shared goal of reducing poverty and will go a long way to ensuring our hardworking citizens have the dignity of stable employment and a steady schedule. With that said, we must ensure that this new regulation will actually achieve the intended result and does so without having a negative impact on our ability to retain, attract, and expand businesses and employment here in Philadelphia. We support the aim of ensuring more predictability for employees in these industries. We must ensure that the framework of this legislation meets the unique needs of Philadelphia given the structural and economic challenges we face in our city. By striking a balance, the legislation can provide important protections for workers while also allowing businesses the latitude to make decisions that match their individual needs. We understand that there continue to be productive conversations on the right way to implement the Fair Workweek legislation, and we stand ready to provide any assistance and support we can to help with that effort. As the lead sponsor of the legislation, Councilwoman Gim and her team have put a great deal of hard work facilitating meetings, roundtables, and conversations where businesses, advocacy groups, and even other municipal legislators have had a chance to meet face-to-face and talk through their concerns. We would like to thank Councilwoman Gim on her continued leadership on this matter, and we commit to continuing to work with all parties to move Bill number 180649 forward. We believe that a fair work week will bring us closer to a fair and equitable Philadelphia for all workers. Thank you for the opportunity to testify here today. Sylvia and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. And as you said, the Councilwoman has facilitated a lot of meetings, and as a result, there are numerous amendments going to be offered to get where, as you said, to make this work for everybody, and that those amendments will be offered today. Any questions from the committee? Councilman O.
Thank you very much for your testimony. So that I'm clear, it sounded to me as though the testimony was that the administration supports the aims and goals, understands that there has to be a proper balance struck between employers and employees, and therefore encourages continued collaborations to reach that balance. Is that correct or incorrect?
So, I think it is correct. We do agree with the bill. We do agree that there has been numerous conversations on all sides. We know the Councilwoman's been in continuous contact with us and with different groups. So, like I said, I think the goal is to combat poverty, and we feel like this legislation will do that and help folks get additional hours and predictable schedules.
And what about the other part?
No, and like I said, we've also heard, and I could turn it over to Sylvie from Commerce, but I know we've also heard from businesses and some of the concerns they have, and we also see that, and I think there's continued support. I know there will be amendments today to take up some of their concerns.
Okay. Are you aware of what the amendments are?
Yes.
Okay. So provided those amendments are incorporated in the bill, you support it, or regardless, you support the bill?
Yeah, I think we need to see, we've seen the amendments, but I think, like I said, there are still some concerns, but we do support the Fair Workweek legislation, and we think...
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
But we know there's ongoing conversations as well.
And I think after this, what happens today, the conversations will continue. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Bass.
Yes.
Let me do the committee, if possible. Councilwoman Bass.
Good afternoon. I just have a quick question.
I think that the city overall, we have a problem with enforcement. So while this is a piece of legislation that is needed for a lot of different reasons and a lot of good things in here with some of the amendments, I wanted to know, how will the city, have we thought about, have we given consideration to enforcement? Because, you know, the fact of the matter is we have a lot of really good ordinances on the books that we do not enforce.
Correct.
And so we want to make sure that this is something that you've given some thought to in terms of how you're going to make sure that we don't just pass something out, that it's actually something that's going to make a difference.
No, definitely, I appreciate that question. So, so the office now, we are hiring a new person to run the office that would handle this legislation. We have 2 employees in there now, and Councilman Greenlee our Chairman Greenlee always helps me every year, try to build on that office through the budget process. But in the legislation, if moving forward, we would like to try to get additional staff into that, and then we will spend time we usually work with the advocacy groups and on the business side to try to create regulations for the implementation of it, and then we roll out that, and there's a period of time, and then we kind of do like a soft, you know, making sure everybody, because a lot of times in the very beginning when we do legislation, once like paid sick leave and wait staff, some businesses don't maybe know all the technical pieces of it, so we walk folks through it. But then I think with the additional staff and the staff that we have in there now and the new leadership that will be coming in on that group, we'll be able to enforce this and make sure that folks are following it.
Okay, so you have given some thought to it, and I guess essentially the idea is to hire additional staff
Yes.
and to work with the coalitions to build the regulations to properly do the enforcement.
Right,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And just to expound a little bit on what Mr. Laser said, I know that was an issue with paid sick leave and wage staff when we passed those legislation. And I think we kind of learned as time went on that it might take a little bit more
Right.
staff, and certainly with another piece of legislation, it'll take some more. But I think we certainly have moved forward in that. And I
Yes.
think the good thing about this, what they have done is they try to work when there appears to be violations. They try to work instead of being punitive right away to see if everybody understands what the laws are. Because it's not, you know, we know it because we live it every day, but some people don't. And I think they've worked real hard in trying to work that out. And I think with additional staff, I think it can work even much better and much more smoothly.
Yeah, and I think, just to add on that, I think the other piece was, before this administration, things were kind of scattered in different areas, you know,
Yes.
MDO had a piece. So I think the goal of this, of my office and the goal of the Mayor's Office of Labor is kind of trying to pull all these workforce protection laws in enforcement under one body, which we have done, and now we're building up staff to do that as well.
Okay. I have no doubt that we can do it. You know, like, I know that with paid sick leave and with other things that have been done by the city, we can do what needs to be done. But it's just, you know, like I said, we have a lot of laws on the books that really do not get the level of enforcement that they need, and they affect the lives of our citizens. So we just want to make sure that there is the enforcement in place. Thank you.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you very much. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown?
Yes, good afternoon, Administration. I'm going to punctuate Councilwoman Baz's point, because that was raised and discussed extensively when we met with the representatives from New York and Seattle, because ultimately, good law is good, but it means nothing if
Correct.
you don't have both the tools and the personnel on the other side of government to make it real. So I'm pleased to hear that the administration has looked carefully at that part of this pie. I want to pose to you the same question I posed to Congressman Bob Brady with regards to the industry concerns around collective bargaining agreements and labor leadership and that entire pie of discussion. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I know we've gotten these concerns as well, and we spoke to the councilwoman about it, also members of organized labor that have been helpful in this piece of the legislation, and we support the way it is because I think they feel that this will be a full protection for them, and it'll have to have buy-in from the labor organization to opt out of the bill, so it won't just be a blanket opt-out like paid sick leave.
Okay. All right. Are you at liberty, and I completely understand if you are not, but are you at liberty to share what those remaining concerns may be at this hour, or are you still in discussions with the sponsor of the bill to work through those hiccups?
The collective bargaining piece?
No. You mentioned that there were still some other pending concerns.
Yeah, I think some of the same concerns that the business community has been voicing were some of the outstanding concerns as well. But at this point, I don't know. I think with some of the amendments coming in, there may be some of those addressed.
Okay.
But
All right,
I don't
then. Would you care to speak to that?
Sure. I mean, I think.
Just
Identify
state your name,
yourself.
just state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Sylvie Gallier-Howard, First Deputy with the Commerce Department. Thank you. So I think, we still need to see what the final amendments are. The business community has provided a list, 4 pages of amendments that they would like to see, and, they may not get all of those amendments, but I think we'd like to see, certainly they have some concerns, and so the Councilman's done a lot to move the bill along and put a lot of amendments in, but there's still a lot of concerns. And we want to make sure that this works for everyone. From the perspective of the Commerce Department, we have workforce and business development all in our mission.
Yes.
And, I kind of always have this mantra of poverty cannot be addressed without a thriving business sector, and you can't attract businesses to a city with poverty. So we kind of constantly have this issue, this double-edged sword, and have to really strike a balance.
Well, you said it right, striking a balance, looking for a win-win. And I want to publicly acknowledge again that Councilwoman Gim has been very circumspect in how she has approached this, and that matters. And nothing is 100%, nobody gets all of what they want, but if we can improve the outcome and move the ball from where we are to where we started to further down the road, then that needs to be recognized at the door. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Sanchez, please.
Thank you. And to continue that line of questioning from the Commerce Department, when we did wage equity, sick leave, even when we did some of the new restaurant regulations, what, if anything, is Commerce doing to be proactive in informing and educating people the facts? Because I think in all of these debates, the facts sometimes get lost. So what is it that we've learned from those that we could do here to be more proactive in informing and educating small businesses about a good business practice?
So specifically about business practices or about these types of policies?
We pass laws, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, I think Deputy Mayor Laser alluded to it, that, when you have different departments working in silos, you're supposed to be the face of business for the city, right?
Yep.
So what is it that we're doing proactively as it relates to the other laws
Yep.
that we've learned, so that in this one, we're informing folks of the facts, right?
So we have the Business Legislation Advisory Group that sends out emails every week that tells the business community about legislation that's been introduced. We have quarterly meetings where we discuss those bills. With regards to different pieces of legislation as they get introduced, we research how it's been applied in other cities. So with this bill, we looked very closely at the other cities. We had conversations with some folks in other cities, and it's different in every city, this legislation, and every city is different. Our poverty level is so much higher. Seattle's is 13%, ours is 26%, San Francisco's 12%. So we really have to make sure we have a bill that's good for Philly, just like San Francisco has to make sure they have a bill that's good for San Francisco. But we look at all those factors and we talk to the business community. We have a lot of dialogue, and honestly, the business community has moved a long way in terms of themselves advocating for their needs and being part of the discussion.
Well, I think, again, we just finished a big debate around housing, and in this body, many people talked about that we don't have a housing problem, we have a jobs problem, we have a jobs poverty problem, and I think this is another tool in moving away from poverty jobs, right? But again, just like my colleagues, I want to make sure that we're setting this up, that all of these pieces of legislation for bad actors, right? Because good employees, they're going to be able to do this, right? They're going to be able to implement it. You have a good collective bargaining agreement, you're going to be able to do it. It really is about the exploitation of workers and people working 80 hours, 3 jobs, right, to make ends meet. So what did you hear from the other cities that you feel are still not addressed or have not been part of the countless meetings and discussions? Anything that springs up? I mean, I've met with the industry folks. There's some points that I can see their perspective, I can disagree with it, but what do you feel that's still not there?
So I noticed that from the other cities, one of the things is about this legislation. I mean, it's really new in most places, but from the findings so far, it's created in some cases more tension between the employer and the employee, more rigor, and so less flexibility in terms of employees being able to just change their schedule when they need to. So, while I certainly appreciate, I'm a mom of 4 kids, I certainly appreciate the need for predictability. The other side of that is if your kid gets sick, you need flexibility. And that has been hindered according to what we've heard. So that's, the other thing is employers here in Philadelphia, right now, we're experiencing a wave of momentum. We're in a good economy, and employers want to be able to add shifts if they suddenly decide, within that 2-week period, look, it looks like we're going to actually need more employees. They want to feel like they can create those extra hours, and certainly in a city like ours, people need those hours, and there are people who will want those hours without having to pay those extra fees. Because when you look at the restaurant industry, it's 4 to 7% is the profit margin. It's not like they're earning tons of profit. So these types of policies can hit their bottom line and can mean they hire fewer people. So, I certainly agree with the Councilwoman that we need a minimum wage that's much higher than what we've got. And, that has to happen, unfortunately, at the state level. Absolutely agree with that. But if you look at the most poverty-stricken areas, such as your district, one of the main factors is there's not enough businesses, and jobs only occur with businesses. So we have to make sure that we are creating and fostering an environment where you can have businesses that create those jobs. If there's bad actors, yeah, we have to deal with them.
Yeah, I guess, again, I want to get to where we become more proactive and, and again, I believe in B Corps and other types of, social impact businesses, because you can make a lot of money and be good to your employees, right? That's not a contradiction, right? I have a hard time with how do we message that, right? Because every time, and obviously, every time we're legislating, business says we're anti-business, right? We have $400 million in tax cuts in our 5-year plan, but we're anti-business. We vote for every Keystone Opportunity Zone, but we're anti-business. We vote for every TIF, but we're anti-business. So I just think that the one thing that I've learned as we've done this legislation is that we got to get more proactive, and and I know the Sustainability Network and others have done a good job. When do we get to send the message that being a good business and having loyal customers, employees is about treating customers well, and customers get treated well when their employees are treated well, and like this. And I just like to change that culture. And I just think it's time that the Commerce Department really take a lead on that, right? Because we have millions of business incentives in this city. And we should never be talking about lifting people out of poverty and that be a challenge given technology and given all of those things. And I think that's a culture shift, right? And I think, because again, having done the sick leave conversation, the airport conversation, I just feel like this has to be a win-win, and big business in particular, right? Has to understand that if you're going to come to Philly and do business, you're not going to pay poverty wages.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman O, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So just for clarification, so that we're not having a private conversation, you're talking about opposition from the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, the National Retail Federation, the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association, 7-Eleven, Pennsylvania Food Merchants Association, American Staffing Association, and other business entities that represent employers. Is that correct?
So, I believe that there's a list of associations that have said that they oppose. There's also a number of businesses that have said that they're willing to come to a compromise and that they are willing to pay additional dollars for when they cut hours, but they would like to reach a deal where they don't have to pay additional dollars to be adding extra hours. Already there's been some concessions made that they're happy about, but I think they're looking for it to go further in order to make it work for them. So there's some that are against and there's some that are looking for a compromise.
Some are against, some are saying we can work on this and make it happen.
Yes.
Okay. Are they saying that they support the bill as it is now?
No, they are not.
Okay. But they are saying that they can work towards a bill that they would agree to.
And I should note, some of them are here today and will be able to answer those questions
Oh,
directly.
okay.
But certainly the businesses that we've been talking to have said to me and to members of council, if we get these things, we can live with this.
Okay.
Even if it costs us money, because they do understand and support the spirit of the bill. But there's certain things that they need to make it work for their businesses. And then there's some that don't support it, and there's probably some that do support it, but we've talked to a bunch of different employers, and at this stage in the process, the majority of those whom I've talked to are willing to support this with the right conditions, with the amendments that they need.
Where will these amendments come from?
I know the conversations are happening between the business community and council members and with the sponsor of the bill. So,
Okay.
we support, as Richie said, we support those conversations, and we're hoping that they can find an agreement. And we're willing to support in any way that we can.
So to this extent, if you could answer this question, I carry my bank in my pocket. I don't know the last time I went to a bank, honestly. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm depositing checks. And then I think about how many people are not working in a bank because I am basically banking on my phone. The technology is very convenient for me. It doesn't cost anything. Same thing for shopping. Amazon, other stores that are opening, Sam's Club, no cashiers. The technology makes it convenient for the customer. The customer is better served many times when technology doesn't work for them with a human being. There's many things technology can't do that a human being does. And then we have the employers who create the jobs, pay, and take the risk. So the balance you're talking about is a balance between the customer, the employer, the worker, and then there is government, kind of like there. The role of government in this kind of equation of what is fundamentally, I think, where you and I do agree, is we're looking at jobs, especially low-wage jobs, and how to keep them, retain them, and to grow them, and ensure that they have a future here in Philadelphia. What is the dynamic that you're looking at that you would like to see come from this entire process of employers, businesses, council people, workers? What balance are you looking for?
I think ultimately a balance that allows for predictability for workers, that also allows for flexibility for workers, that doesn't hurt the business bottom line to an extent that they have to close or cut shifts or jobs or hours. So really something that everybody can work with that ultimately would be a win-win over time.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's incredible to me. First of all, let me give a lot of credit and applause to the author of this legislation for putting this forward so that we can begin the dialogue. Let me also thank the business community for being willing to sit down with you and negotiate a lot of the key points. And I know we kind of get stuck on certain points, but we are close. To the credit of the business community, to the credit of members of council and the author of this bill, we have negotiated our way to close. But I hear some of the same arguments that we heard when we were talking about paid sick leave. And how if this bill passes, the sky is going to fall, businesses are going to close, and the world as we know it is going to shift off its axis and spiral out of control. I remember when we talked about a living wage bill for the airport, and I see some of the faces that were out there fighting for that. And I was told that planes would stop flying, that the airport would close, and that life as we know it would change forever. I want us to stop using the politics of the drastic and come together like we're doing on the politics of the sensible and things that we can agree on. I want you to know that I've been to Seattle. When we were talking about the Amazon thing, we had that conversation about why I was a little reluctant about signing that letter. And the reason was when I met with hotel workers, when I rode in a cab, Uber now, they were telling me that, and they make $15 an hour, that some of them could not afford the local rents. The average rent here in Philadelphia, I believe, is $1,100 a month. Without predictability, without a living wage, people in Seattle have had to travel 1 hour outside of the city, live 3 deep in an apartment to be able to live in Seattle. So I don't want to my friends at the Chamber of Commerce, I still love you. I spent most of my life financing and most small business, if you know me, that's my lineage. But we cannot not keep pace with the realities of what it costs to live in this city and push our workforce further and further out to have the highest number of sheriff sales and evictions for renters and not adjust the dial a little bit in this way. So for me, and you know I have to leave early, I'm gonna get an opportunity to be the first one to vote on this bill. As soon as you have to do a procedure to do that. But we're gonna follow procedures. We're gonna follow procedures, and I'm allow the chairman to do his thing. But I do have to go.
Okay. Is that right now, Councilman? Or?
That is right now.
Okay, how about if I recognize Councilman Dom, and let me talk to you for a second offline.
You got
it. Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. I have a few questions I'd like to ask Commerce. Any idea how many employees in the city this legislation might affect?
I believe the number is 130,000 more or less.
Yeah, can you repeat your answer? I don't know if we could hear that. It was 130,000?
I believe it's 130,000, more or less.
And any idea of how many businesses it might affect?
No, I don't know.
And based on the fact that this region, there's 650,000 jobs in Philadelphia and 2.1 million in the region where we have the lowest percentage of any major urban area of jobs in our city, are we concerned about, not just this bill, but in general, having laws that are specific to Philadelphia, where I'd rather have laws that are specific to the whole state, okay? But are we concerned about laws that are specific to Philadelphia that will put us in an uncompetitive position with attracting jobs to the city?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold it. All right? Everybody here, certainly including council member, has a right to ask a question without being shouted down. All right? I hope that's clear. I think most people know where I stand on this bill, but if somebody has a difference of opinion, they have the absolute right to do it without being interrupted. All right? I hope that's clear. I'm sorry, Councilman.
It's okay.
So, I mean, I think Philadelphia is always in a position where all cities, but Philadelphia always worries a little bit about that because we do have New Jersey, Delaware, all the states around us, and so the cities in those states have higher minimum wage. A lot of them have lower, they don't have as much of a tax burden as we do. So we always are trying to be more competitive and try to make it easier to do business and a better place for employees. You know, what I would say is that Philadelphia, we were managing decline for many decades. We're now in a place where we're managing growth, but we're still anemic in comparison to other cities. So we've seen 1.5% job growth, whereas New York's seen almost 3%, San Francisco has seen 4.3%. The sales per capita in Seattle is 63,000, ours is 7,900. So the reality is we're very much hamstrung by our poverty rate, which is why we need to make sure that we're measured in terms of this type of legislation. I talked to someone in Emeryville, which is a tiny little city where this passed, and they actually have, they passed a bill and they've stripped things from the bill since passing the bill because it has not worked for the business community. I'd rather us be in a position where we're measured and we do things gradually, see that they work, see if they don't work, and if we need to make changes, we don't go backwards, we go forwards. Even New York, for retail, they only require 72 hours advance notice, not 2 weeks. Now, that's nothing, but I don't know why New York did that, but that tells you something. Philadelphia is going to do 2 weeks, New York is 72 hours. New York, by the way, has 11,000 retail sales per capita. So we just need to make sure we have a bill that works for us, works for our business community, works for employees, and does not at all threaten increasing our poverty rate. That's the last thing we want to do.
Okay.
Councilman, if I could interrupt, if you have another question, I promised Councilman Jones we go through this procedure, if I could. Okay, bear with us out there. We're temporarily going to suspend the hearing of the Committee on Law and Government, go into a public meeting. We have a quorum present, and the chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want the record to reflect that I will be voting aye on amendments to Bill number 180649, and will be voting to move the bill out of committee with a favorable recommendation.
As amended.
As amended.
All right. For the record, Councilman Jones will be recorded as voting aye on Bill 180649 as amended. The amendments will be offered at the public meeting. We will now come out of our public meeting, go back into our public hearing. Councilman Dom, you still have questions?
I have a question. Do we have the amendments that are going to be offered?
Yes, they have been circulated.
Are there
yes.
going to be other amendments offered?
Not that I'm aware of.
And what happens if they are?
His won't be counted as a vote.
Just on the ones that...
The ones that have been offered, yes.
Not the ones being worked on that were referenced here? Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I'm looking for clarity.
Okay, now I understand. It can get a little confusing. I understand. Councilman Dom?
I guess I want to go back to Sylvia. You mentioned some amendments about different ideas of other cities. Have those been presented to this committee?
Well, my understanding is that the business community has been in contact directly with all members of council regarding amendments that they would like to see and are continuing conversations with council to reach an agreement.
Yeah, Councilman, the administration has no amendments. These are amendments that are from outside the administration that folks have spoken to council. But we don't have any amendments from the administration.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, if there are no further questions, again, and Ms. Lays, I just want to go on record, as you stated earlier, that your office has brought together, I think very well, the various labor-related bills before they were all kind of all over the place. And now, so I just want to recognize the efforts you have done to try to make this a little more concise, and we keep trying, and I appreciate all your effort, and certainly the Commerce Department.
We want to
So
thank you every year. We appreciate all the support
Okay.
you and this body gives us for
Thank you very
adding
much.
additional folks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us today.
Ms. Marconi, our next panel, please.
Patrick Eiding, Pastor Billy Thompson, Fred Wright, and Mary Catherine Ricker.
Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, could I just make a brief statement
Sure.
for the council members who've raised concerns about collective bargaining agreements? We've circulated into the record a memorandum from McCracken, Stemmerman, and Holsbury that makes it very clear that the bill, as currently stated, allows for flexibility and clear protections for both the bargaining unit and the employer, and that it is both a common and beneficial practice to offer an opt-out in which we can, the two parties can both mutually determine whether to accept increase in the floor of standards, which do not currently exist around a lot of scheduling laws, or they can waive the portions of the bill. That is their right. It is both common and normal. The Supreme Court has ruled on this. As long as that the waiver, which is clear and unmistakable, is in the record, the way that the bill is currently written passes clear legal muster and should be considered as such. Thank you.
Thank you. That letter will be made part of the record, and copies will be provided to the committee and to the other members that are present here. Mr. Eiding, sorry, I think you're going first. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council and my fellow witnesses. My name is Patrick Eiding, and I am proud to say I serve as president of the Philadelphia Council AFL-CIO, representing over 150,000 working people here in Philadelphia. I have had the pleasure of co-chairing a series of roundtable discussions that brought community, business, and labor leaders together to discuss this issue and the proposed legislation. Thanks to the excellent leadership of co-host Bill Hassasso, these discussions were as respectful as they were productive. During these discussions, Councilwoman Jim and her colleagues heard from small business owners, community organizers, labor leaders, and everyone in between. The Councilwoman has been an active participant in these discussions and has already made amendments to this legislation to reflect their concerns. I want to applaud Councilwoman Jim and her colleagues for having such an open and inclusive process for this bill. I think that we would have a lot more progress in the city if members of City Council would continue to use this approach. The SHIFT Project, a national data collection effort led by two professors from the University of California, recently published a study that really helps put these workers' issues in perspective. The study of 1,346 Philadelphia area hourly workers found that 77% of these workers surveyed want a more stable and predictable work schedule. Half of the total number of workers surveyed are parents. And not having a predictable work schedule has a major impact on their family and quality of life. Working people deserve fair conditions and pay for their labor. It is with that in mind that the Philadelphia Council, AFL-CIO, has elected to support this campaign for a fair work week. We believe strongly in the dignity of work, and we believe that all workers, and I want to emphasize that, all workers deserve to be treated fairly in their workplace. The same report from SHIFT Project has found that workers with unpredictable schedules are more likely to experience food insecurity. They have gone without eating because they aren't getting enough hours and can't afford to buy enough food for their families and themselves. This initiative fits into what we believe Philadelphia is about. Truly the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. A wonderful city where we take care of each other. That is why this council passed a paid sick leave law, a wage theft law, and is working hard to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I want to thank the City Council Committee for inviting me to speak and giving me the opportunity to provide labor's perspective on these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eiding. Pastor Thompson, would you like to go next, please? Speak right now. Pull the microphone up, please. Identify yourself and proceed.
My name is Pastor Billy Thompson. I am the pastor of Adonai United Baptist Church, and I am speaking on behalf of the Evening Baptist Ministers Conference of Philadelphia and vicinity. 7 months ago, I sat in this very chamber to show my support for Fair Work Week. Before I start, I want to acknowledge the 8 council members who have signed on to support this common sense legislation. Audience, I hope that you will join me in offering thanks to Councilwoman Gim, Councilman Greenlee, Councilman Johnson, Councilman Kiana Sanchez, Councilman Jones, Councilman Hennon, Councilman Squilla, and Councilwoman Blackwell. It is an election year, and your actions will not go unnoticed. When I spoke last in these chambers to support the 130,000 retail, fast food, and hospitality workers in our city who get virtually no notice of their schedule, who have no idea how many hours they will work, and who have no path out of poverty despite showing up to work every day, I mentioned James 4:17. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him or her, it is sin. That's right. And today is Judgment Day. I want to add Luke 8:17, which says, "For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest. Nothing is anything secret that will not be known and come to light." So today the question is, whose side are you on? The audience is filled with two different types of people here today. Your constituents, the people who elected you, who you took an oath to represent. And then there are some people in here, the few amount that are powerful, who are paid to make sure that this bill doesn't advance. They are the minority in this room. They are here to represent corporations that make billions of dollars each year. They will tell you that this is bad for business, bad for Philadelphia's economy. But what's worse for Philadelphia's economy than keeping our people poor and desperate? The Pennsylvania Retail Association released a so-called report saying that everything is good and workers are happy and everyone should just move on. Then why is this room full? Actual research funded by the National Institutes of Health and the U.S. Department of Labor support what our workers are saying. 50% of retail, fast food, and hospitality workers are parents, not high schoolers, as industry would have us to believe. 50% of workers with unstable schedules in this city have gone without food because they couldn't afford it. That means too many of the people in this room struggle with hunger. Their children struggle with hunger. There are some people in this room right now who are hungry. 50% of workers with unstable schedules have had to leave their kids in less than ideal circumstances. These unstable schedules increase the risk that children ages 0 to 4 will be left in care of their siblings. Do not ignore their stories. Do not look away. Do not ignore Tori's story of walking miles to work in the dead of winter because there was no money for car fare. Or Shaheem, who was fired for speaking up. Or Rob, who was retaliated against. Do not ignore the stories of dropping out of school, missing parent-teacher conferences, and doctor's appointments. The workers have spoken. If Target, Walmart, and Saxby's are so concerned about how this will hurt their business, why not say that on the record? Why not come from out of the shadows? Corporations want to forsake their employees in secret, not in public. But what's done in the dark comes out in the light. You're either on the side of ending poverty or not. You're either on the side of profits or on the side of people. Which side are you on?
Pastor, if I could ask you to finish, please. I need you to finish up. Is that it? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, all right. Let's move on.
move on. Who would like to, all right, come on, please. We have a lot of people who want to testify, including people who support your position, so let's give them a chance, okay? Who would like to go? Mr. Wright, I think your name was called next, but whoever, work it out there. Please identify yourself and proceed, please.
Good afternoon, members of the Law and Government Committee and council people. My name is Frederick Wright, President of ASME, District Council 47. I represent city employees and workers in the private nonprofit sector here in Philadelphia and some brothers and sisters working outside the city. I'm here today to speak in favor of Bill number 180649, Fair Work Week. This bill will provide protections for workers in retail, food service, and hospitality industry. As union workers, we gain workplace-related protections for our members through collective bargaining and because of laws passed to protect the rights of union workers. We know that when the rights of workers are protected, it is a plus for all of us. We believe in worker solidarity and support fairness concerning worker rights in all workplaces. We know that people need a clear sense of what hours they will be required to work, how much they will be paid for working those hours, and when they are sick, they will have health insurance to pay for their doctors and hospital visits. Having these concerns backed by law, as well as having the ability to point out inconsistencies in the application of those laws without being penalized and being removed from their job and raising those concerns is very important for workers. One of the reasons of union organizing historically has been to protect the rights of workers on the job from arbitrary and unreasonable actions on the part of employers. We realize that the 130,000 workers in the retail, food, and hospitality workplaces do not have the benefits and protections that we receive as members of ASME District Council 47. We support City Council in considering this legislation that will provide better protection for those workers. We urge you to pass this legislation because it will help mothers and fathers with children to have a better sense of when they can pick them up from school and daycare. We urge you to pass the legislation that will help children know when their mother and father will be home to help them with their homework. We urge you to pass the legislation that will enable some people to have a second job so they can better provide for their families. For all these and many other reasons, we urge you to pass Bill number 180649 for the Fair Work Week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Thank you very much. Ms. Ricker, right?
Yeah,
okay, please
perfect. Thank
identify
you.
yourself and proceed.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, members of the City Council. I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Mary Catherine Ricker, and I'm a National Board Certified Middle School English teacher by license, currently serving as Executive Vice President of the 1.7 million American Federation of Teachers Union, including representing the educators who belong to the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. Thank you. To echo our AFL-CIO president, we believe strongly in the dignity of all work, including schoolwork. Educators know that this is the right thing to do because we know it will support our students and their families. I speak for a vast majority of our members when I say that in my 13 years of family teacher conferences, I never once met a family member who didn't care desperately about their children. I did meet family members who couldn't be as involved in school as others because they were faced with the untenable choice of working to provide support for their children versus showing up to school to provide support for their children. Mom, can you come to my choir concert? Can you come on my field trip? Can we go to the book fair tonight? Can we go to my 8th grade promotion ceremony? I have listened to heartbreaking reactions of uncertainty from parents who care desperately about their children and want to show up, but know that an uncertain work schedule was the only barrier between being as involved in their child's education as they wanted to be. And I applaud the City of Philadelphia for determining that there is a solution to this problem, and you are determining that solution today. We are not asking businesses to do everything, but we are asking businesses to do something. and to work with us. Because when we decide to be worker-friendly, we are deciding to be family-friendly, which means we are telling our students that they matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Iding, Mr. Wright. Thank you. Ms. Marconi, our next panel, please.
Dr. Anna Halley, Dr. Sabrina Wright, and Derek Jones.
Okay, but we have their testimony. Okay. I want to repeat what I said earlier. I think we have your written testimony. I think you submitted that. If we could, because we really are far behind here, if we could summarize your statements, I really appreciate it. And your full statement will be made part of the public record. Thank you. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Is this on? We're going.
It's on.
Okay. Hi, I am Anna Haley. I'm an associate professor at Rutgers School of Social Work down in New Brunswick, New Jersey. My thanks to Councilmember Greenlee and other committee members for the chance to share my research relevant to this committee's consideration of the Fair Workweek bill. I have studied low-wage and hourly jobs and their conditions from both employer and employee perspectives for the last 16 years with Professors Susan Lambert, Kristen Harknett, and Daniel Schneider. I lead the research team funded by the City of Seattle to evaluate the implementation of Seattle's new secure scheduling ordinance. Professor Lambert and I are investigating the implementation process from the employer side of that ordinance. As Harknett and Schneider have found, Philadelphia's hourly service workers, much like their counterparts around the U.S. that we've now seen for probably a decade in research, face scheduling conditions on the job that often destabilize their income and ability to combine work with other obligations. I'm not going to repeat that because that's been summarized, and I know you all well know the SHIFT project data. Research has well documented further that the negative impacts of such employer-driven schedule practices for workers and their families are substantial. In my own work, I found that women in hourly service jobs, ironically, it was a study of school engagement, as one of the last speakers just referred to. So women in hourly service jobs who are primary caregivers for children had little or no input into their work schedules, were required to give employers far in advance notice of their own absences, even as those employers posted worker schedules at the last minute, were required to extend their shift end times at the last minute, and faced uncertainty about how many hours they would work in a given week or even a scheduled shift with frequent early send homes. As research has increasingly documented this set of issues, so the impacts and the prevalence of these just-in-time scheduling practices, employers sometimes respond by describing the volatile business conditions they face and resultant need for labor flexibility. And there is no doubt it is really, really hard running a business in the service sector. Yet research suggests that labor demand is not vastly unpredictable there. This is partly because business needs, and in turn need for labor, actually show a fair amount of consistency over time. My colleague Susan Lambert has found that in her work. In addition, today's forecasting systems, including scheduling technologies, can anticipate much of the remaining variation in demand. As well, some variation corresponds with business decisions that can be substantially planned. But further, not all firms in the service sector rely equally on labor flexibility practices, even when sharing the same operating conditions. Professor Susan Lambert's and my research over many years in the retail, food service, and hospitality sectors has found striking variation in how frontline managers schedule workers. This is the case not just in different cities, in different industries, and in different chains, but often within the same cities, the same industries, and even within sites of the same chain. The big box retailer Costco provides a striking case study of a company that appears very committed to delivering schedule stability for their employees. Costco has not generally been a fan of scheduling regulation, indeed, to be clear. However, we found in our case study of the firm, for which they generously allowed us to use their name, that Costco guarantees minimum weekly hours to its employees, 38 for full-time, 24 for part-time, and thus incentivizes managers to concentrate hours on existing employees. Employees' scheduled shifts did sometimes vary week to week, but Costco posted work schedules at least 2 weeks in advance so they could plan accordingly. And while managers carefully tracked labor cost to sales ratios, like their retail counterparts, when customer traffic was slow in a given department, employees were rotated to busier departments rather than having their hours cut, or a manager asked for volunteers to leave early, but if they didn't get any, nobody went home. Such strategies are not limited to large footprint stores. In my study of restaurant employment, that included sites of 2 national US-based low-end chains, restaurant chains in suburban Seattle, Chicago, and Vancouver in Canada. Staff reallocation was also used to deal with business fluctuations, like slow times. In Vancouver, managers at sites of 2 chains covered by a minimum daily pay law carefully forecasted the need for labor into schedules in advance. And then when shifts came up slow, they assigned waiters deep cleaning or food prep tasks. In contrast, managers of sites of the same chains in Seattle and Chicago, this is before Seattle's law.
Dr. Hare, if I could ask you to just wrap up,
Okay.
please, because we want to try to move on as quickly as
I
possible.
think this lays a fairly essential foundation to the business case and the pushback, so I really want this on the
Pardon me?
spoken record. I think this lays a fairly substantial foundation.
Okay, and
for
again,
the
your
business
statement will be
pushback.
made part of the record,
Yeah,
but we're
okay.
trying to,
Okay,
I did say we're trying to keep it to just a few minutes for each
What I
person.
would note is studying the sites of the same chains in Seattle and Chicago prior to or absent the law, those protections did not exist. Those practices did not exist. Rather, you had workers sent home early. So in that case, we find in our research that many firms simply do not voluntarily act to provide predictable work hours for their employees, necessitating some sort of regulation. I do want to make some points about these laws, which I currently study in Seattle, and in my research with Susan Lambert there. The proposed laws, including Philadelphia's, do not restrict employers' ability to schedule employees for hours, days, or shifts that vary from one posted schedule to the next. Employers still have that freedom. Adjustments to the work schedule are also not generally prohibited. Instead, the laws require employers to pay some premium for late changes that they initiate. Should the proposed bill pass here, Philadelphia managers, like their counterparts in cities with these laws, will thus have 2 routes to compliance across most of the provisions. They could avoid scheduling practices that are now more costly under the law due to the imposed premiums, or they can opt to pay the premiums in exchange for greater labor flexibility. This is akin to how employers respond to overtime and not wanting to pay overtime, give employees more than 40 hours. Basically, the principle of these laws is to more fairly, split the cost of that flexibility between employer and employee, rather than, as is the case now, pre-regulation, it being borne solely by the employee. Okay, let me summarize. We have ongoing research in Seattle about implementation, and we find that there is variation across firms in their reliance on labor flexibility. We will hear loudly when the regulations are being considered that labor flexibility is uniformly needed and applied. That is not what we find in Seattle. We would argue that is the case, that is likely to be the case in other cities.
All right, thank you. Doctor,
Okay,
I'm going to have to
thank you.
call time, okay? Thank you, please. Dr. Spate, is it? Spate?
Spates.
Spate, please. Right in the microphone, please identify yourself and proceed.
Oh, wait, that's better. Hi. So yes, I am Dr. Sabrina Spates. Thank you so much for the opportunity to offer testimony today. I'm an assistant professor of business and management at Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts, and I've studied the temporal boundaries between work and non-work domains throughout my graduate studies. I recently completed my PhD at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where I investigated schedule instability in my dissertation work. My interest in schedules spurred from my observation that the literature on work-life balance in general, and workplace flexibility specifically, captured the experiences of high-status, well-educated professionals, but did not reflect the experiences of individuals in other occupational categories. So in my dissertation, I distinguished between employee and organizationally driven flexibility. The employee-driven flexibility is what we often think about, having control and discretion over your work. Conversely, organizationally driven flexibility does not make central the preferences of the employee, and instead, flexibility is focused on the interests of the employer and is driven by the organization, often in response to consumer demands and external competition. Thus, employers may create flexibility in their labor by altering schedules and work hours to meet these organizational demands. So using this organizationally driven flexibility, we see that in day-to-day life, unpredictable schedules are attributable to employer practices, specifically providing limited advance notice of schedules, often less than 1 week, last-minute changes to schedules that have already been posted, and inconsistent day changes, so being scheduled, for example, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of one week, but then asked to come in Monday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of the next week. And these outcomes of these employer practices are stress and strain on individuals and their families, as we've heard today. And specifically, unpredictable schedules affect this idea of work-family conflict because of those time demands, which makes it difficult to plan family activities and other non-work activities because future planning is constantly undermined by a consistently changing schedule. And also it increases stress and strain that increase emotional exhaustion and hot tempers at home that can also make it difficult to engage in family activities. But unpredictable schedules influence workplaces as well. Although varied schedules are an assumed part of doing business in many sectors, stress from unpredictable schedules can decrease job performance and morale at work. The issue of scheduling and hours is seen as a component of fairness in the workplace. Because when employees have contributed by performing their jobs well, showing up on time, they expect to have at least some of their scheduling preferences honored. And when they are not, expectations are violated, negative emotions and stress increase, and some employees want to leave. It is these unforeseen costs and negative employee attitudes and ultimate exit from the organization that is not considered by employers who assumed varied, flexible schedules are required to increase profits. In fact, a recent extensive, rigorous intervention with the Gap, the clothing retailer, focused on providing employees with more stable, predictable schedules. The total cost for the Gap for the intervention was $31,200 to hire additional staff, and also the time commitments of managers to devote to meetings and rolling out the intervention. The result of the stable schedule intervention, however, was a 7% increase in sales, well above the 1% to 2% assumed growth, which was calculated to be $2.9 million in revenue. Definitely worth the initial investment. So overall, the data demonstrate that unpredictable schedules make it harder to coordinate, plan, and meet responsibilities outside of work. These challenges increase stress and negative outcomes for individuals, families, and businesses. Now, although different families and lifestyles may require more adjustments to work schedules, unpredictable schedules are driven in large part by employer practices of limited notice of work and last-minute changes to schedules that have already been posted. And it's really important to note that much of this research that's done on unpredictable schedules are found in occupations where unpredictable schedules are somewhat expected, like amongst nurses or retail employers like I just described. And so this suggests that the general awareness of unpredictable schedules does not eliminate the negative effects, and that more attention must be paid to the practices that occur within organizations and how employers are increasing the uncertainty in the lives of their employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Sir.
Yes, hi. My name is Derek Jones with Deputy. It's an honor to testify before you here today. The reason I'm with you is my role with Deputy. I have firsthand experience helping hundreds of local businesses adapt to predictable scheduling and fair work week regulations across the country. Software is available to support and streamline compliance with scheduling laws such as those proposed in Philadelphia. We've worked with a mix of mom and pop, as well as Fortune 100 retail, fast food, and hospitality companies in this effort. But let me first start with what is a workforce management software. Basically, a workforce management software is a replacement of the paper scheduling and time card system that many businesses use today. With a workforce management system, a business can create a schedule that meets the intersection of the projected business needs, preferences and availability of the employees, and do so without breaking any labor rules, including overtime, cloaking, meal and rest breaks, how to handle minors' hours, and fair work week rules. Employees then electronically punch in and out for timekeeping, and we submit that information electronically to third-party payroll companies to accurately pay the employees. My direct role at Deputy is to monitor federal, state, and local wage and hour regulations, and then to translate those rules into our software. Now, I'd like to share 4 things that we've learned when deploying Deputy in jurisdictions that have passed fair work week regulations. Number 1, when the rule is practical, complying is not as hard as it seems. Yet, I certainly understand the definition of practical can be subjective. Let me tell you what that means to us software people. It means eliminating as much paper as possible. Paper is a step backwards and causes complexity, not only for the business, but with auditors who are trying to enforce the rule. And number two, software's role should be to facilitate and automate the set of rules, instead of software being a requirement for the rule being so complex that it can only be solved through software. After reviewing the recently amended set of rules for Philadelphia's Fair Work Week, we feel confident we can facilitate the changes in our product. Number two, what we've learned. There are benefits to the employers. What I've witnessed in most retail, hospitality, and fast food operations is that they value their employees and treat them with respect and dignity. But just like this set of rules is passed to prevent a few bad actors from taking advantage of employees, there are situations where the new set of rules just don't work for some employees. In exchange for providing more predictable schedules and therefore paychecks, employers are able to keep employees a bit more accountable to work the schedules that are posted and to show up on time. And it also pushes the admin burden of the scheduling managers, who are often hourly workers themselves. Many times the people who are creating the schedules are hourly workers themselves. It pushes the burden from taking these calls at night to the schedules being changed and self-directed by the employees. Number three, what we have actually found is once a software system is used, there is actually a net decrease in the penalty payments. When we deploy our software, it's a complete re-education of the law and how to operationalize with technology. In a recent analysis of our work in New York City, we saw premium counts fall from 6% to 1% across a major fast food brand once they adopted the technology and retrained all their employees on how to manage the new rules. The number four thing that we've learned deploying our tool, labor forecasting is more accurate. Labor forecasting is the process of predicting how much labor a business needs in the future. In one scenario, Deputy has supported a fast food company with rehauling their labor forecasting, which we anticipate will result in nearly $100,000 of savings per year. Had the business not been forced to look at their labor standards, simply put, how they determine how many and when each employee needs to come in during the day, they might not have uncovered this hidden cost savings. I might also add this isn't a pure reduction in hours, it's a reallocation of hours during the right times when customers are coming in. Finally, I'd like to share 3 details on how our workforce management system actually helps solve for the rule. Number one, we have an electronic communication feature that sends out the advance notice of schedules in the good faith estimate. Number two, what we call active attestation. This is a real-time compare of the clock in and clock out of what was scheduled. So when an employee walks up to clock out, we identify if they're leaving early or checking out late, and we ask the employee to attest that the change was made by themselves and not the manager. We also notify scheduling managers if they're making a change that might trigger a premium or a penalty. In most cases, the scheduling manager just isn't aware that they are breaking a rule, so a simple pop-up will prevent the issue from happening. In summary, practical Fair Work Week regulations can be solved with current workforce management software. There are benefits to employers, and using software has actually resulted in big decreases in premium payments versus the paper methods. Okay. Thank you for us to speak today, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Councilman O, I think you have a question, please.
Yeah, just for my clarification, what I'm kind of summarizing all this testimony to be is that there is software that makes it convenient and expedient to manage workforce and deal with the laws as long as they are practical and require less paper, and that the scheduling of work hours is a result of business practice more than it is of business intelligence, and therefore it is your testimony that it is not by necessity that the scheduling is done the way it is nowadays. It's just kind of always been done that way. And so your research that you're presenting, or your testimony, is that businesses can provide, and they have done so voluntarily, as in Costco, they have provide predictable work scheduling, and that the practice is not necessarily the most efficient way to do things. Is that about correct? Okay, thank you. All right, thanks. If you're not disagreeing with me, that's fine. Okay, that's what I understand. All right, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. No other questions? Thank you all very much. Thank you for your time and the work you do. Ms. Marcone, you want to call our next panel, please? We're getting there, folks.
Joanne Wren, Christina Vance, Julie Coker-Graham, John Holub, and Jay Delvecchia.
Yeah, he'll distribute. Thank you. Thank you. Just repeat two things I've said before, please. If we have your written testimony, if you could summarize, we appreciate it as we keep trying to move on. And secondly, everyone will testify without being interrupted in any way. Thank you very much. Please, whoever, if you interrupt, you'll leave. It's real simple. Okay? Thank you. Please, whoever would like to go first.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Greenlee, Councilwoman Gim.
Maybe a little closer to the microphone, okay?
Sure. And members of the Law and Government Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify regarding the Fair Workweek employment legislation. So I'm the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we're charged with bringing overseas
Just say
visitors.
your name. Just say your
Julie
name.
Coker-Graham. And we're charged with bringing overseas visitors, but more importantly, meetings, conventions, and trade shows to the city. So in essence of time, and certainly making sure that we get through this in a thoughtful manner, I would just really stress three key points. The first point is certainly the flexibility in hotels. Having been a general manager for 10 years and having come from Hyatt Hotels, where I worked for 21 years, I'm very familiar with last-minute occurrences that pop up. So from a convention standpoint, not only do we compete with neighboring cities and states like New York and DC, but in terms of the country, it's very competitive. And so the concern that we would have with this legislation is that it would inhibit our hotel partners from having an opportunity to schedule on a service basis. So we have things like the NCAA. So for example, the year with Villanova, when they went to the championship, had Villanova played here, we wouldn't have had as many hotel rooms. If there's an out-of-town team that's playing, we have the ability to bring them to the hotels, and of course, those are also last-minute decisions. Similar to an Eagle playoff game. Same type of scenario. It's always last minute, and we want to make sure that we're providing the best possible service. The other thing that I would also say is that as we look at hotel development that comes into the city, which makes Philadelphia competitive from a convention standpoint, we have a convention, and as we speak, they have 5,000 rooms on peak. They have over 15,000 attendees that are here. What makes Philadelphia unique is the affordability of our hotel package. Almost every major city has a convention center, and they all have a hotel package. What sets Philadelphia apart is the ability for us to be an affordable city when it comes to hotel rooms. So those are the key points, and obviously the rest of it is in my testimony.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your working that out with your testimony. I appreciate it. Thank you. Whoever would like to go next, please identify yourself and proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Joanne Wren, General Manager of the Logan Hotel. My colleague Jay and I are here today to express concerns about bill number...
Hold on. No. No. Move it back up. Take it down. Listen. Hold on. Let me make it real clear, okay? Everybody's going to have the right to testify up here without being interrupted, okay? if there is interruptions to these people, we're going to call off the hearing and the bill will not move. Everybody understand that? And you know where I stand on this. I'm a co-sponsor. I believe strongly in the bill, but I believe strongly that everybody has the right to speak. If there's another interruption, as the chair, I will stop the hearing. All right? Please.
Thank you. My name is Joanne Wren. I'm the general manager of the Logan Hotel. We are here today to express concerns about bill number 180649 on behalf of my hotel and the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association. Jay will address the negative impact the legislation would have on our operations, but first I would like to share why we do not believe the bill should apply to hotels. I started in the hotel business as a front desk associate and now manage over 400 employees at the Logan Hotel. I'm a working mother raising 4 children while maintaining a demanding job, so I empathize with any team members who may have concerns about their schedules. I would like to stress that our opposition to the bill does not seek to discount our team members' hard work, determination, and dedication to their jobs. From housekeeping and banquet staff to guest service agents, we treat our team members like they're a part of our family, which is why we already offer them competitive wages and an extensive set of benefits. At the last council hearing on this issue, Councilwoman Gim spoke eloquently about how Philadelphia needs more good jobs that pay a living wage and offer enough hours and benefits for poor Philadelphians to rise out of poverty. The hotel industry couldn't agree more and already does exactly that, and not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's good business. Our goal is to attract and retain the best talent at every level and in every department in a very competitive hiring market. Philadelphia hotels employ over 11,000 individuals, 80% of whom are Philadelphia residents living in every neighborhood of the city. Our employees look like Philadelphia too because GPHA works closely with agencies such as Philadelphia OIC, Philadelphia Academies Inc., and others to ensure a diverse workforce from the frontline employees to upper management. Based on a yearly wage survey of Philadelphia hotels, our average wage is both greater than the Philadelphia Living Wage Ordinance requirements and more than twice the state minimum wage, including $16.02 hourly wage for front office employees and $15.48 for housekeeping. Most hotels also compose of full-time employees with at least 70% working 35 hours or more. Benefit packages include not only traditional benefits such as healthcare and 401k, but also often include unique perks such as employee meal plans that provide employees with lunches and dinners at no cost, adoption assistance, access to legal assistance, tuition reimbursement, and many more. So Philadelphia's hotels are absolutely already providing those good jobs that the city needs more of. Our employees embrace a slighter, more flexible schedule and the opportunity to get more shifts as they become available. When a shift becomes available, we go through the list and offer the opportunity to everyone. And no hotel has ever punished someone for turning down a shift. We consistently hear feedback from our employees that they want to work when there is work to be done and tips to be made. When there are additional shifts, there are workers who want the hours. For every employee I have that may want a desire a mandated 2-week schedule, another would prefer much more flexibility, as that is why many choose to work in the hospitality industry. And they tend to stay in the industry. Many of our employees have been with the hotel for several decades. Hotels are constantly surveying our employees, and they're telling us they are very pleased with their jobs. And that's why we work so hard to keep them, because every day a new hotel down the street will try to steal them away. These are the reasons why no other city in the country has included hotels when they passed predictive scheduling legislation. This bill might make sense for some industries, but the argument for it certainly do not apply to the hotel business. And we ask that you please amend hotels out of the legislation. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to go next? Please identify yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you for everyone in the room to listening. Good afternoon. I'm Jay Delavecchio. I'm the general manager of the locally and minority-owned Westin Philadelphia Hotel. And I'm also here to express my concerns about bill number 180648 on behalf of my hotel and the 80 hotels and 11,000 employees in the Greater Hotel Philadelphia Association. And I also want to say that we wake up every morning wanting to make it a great place to stay in our hotels and also a great place to work. And we do everything we can to make sure we meet those endeavors. So the care is paramount to our employees each and every day. The reality of the hotel business is that the only thing that is certain is the uncertainty. We offer hotel guests a great deal of flexibility to cancel or change their plans. While this is great for guests, it can cause unexpected changes to our schedules and staffing. We do our best to provide our staff with as much notice as possible about their schedules. Team members receive their schedules with a minimum, and this is a minimum, of 1 week advance notice, and we always aim, and I think most successfully, adhere to the posted schedules. However, due to the flexibility we offer our guests, a 2-week schedule with zero tolerance is not realistic. Within 2 weeks, there could be many micro adjustments that we have to make in order to provide the highest level of service to our guests and to account for fluctuations in rooms and event bookings. We may have a wedding, for example, a year in advance it was booked. The industry standard is anytime you have an event in a hotel, you have 3 days to make any changes. You can add attendees, you can deduct attendees, you can add services such as additional bars or action stations which require additional staffing. And because of that, we need to bring on additional people or sometimes maybe not have as many additional people. We also know our business that things can quickly move in the other direction. For example, when we had Made in America concert on the Parkway, one hotel experienced a 35-room block cancel at the very last minute, only to stay at a luxury home booked through Airbnb. They had to call and reduce their staffing because the revenue and the business disappeared. If this legislation, if this bill were law, not only would the hotel lose revenue from the room block that they saw disappear, but it would also have compounded the financial loss due to the additional predictability pay that would be required upon them. Our hotels adjacent to the airport would be especially impacted by this bill. I've worked at 2 such hotels in the past, and I can tell you there'd be days I would go to work and we'd be 40, 30% occupied. In a matter of hours, the hotel would be oversold. It could be because of a severe weather storm in Chicago, for example, that would impact Philadelphia, and those Philadelphia airport hotels would be booked and the restaurants would be full, but they wouldn't have staff to accommodate because you would have to pay the predictability pay. There's no way to legislate that type of occurrence that happens in our hotels on a regular basis. If this bill passes, it will negatively impact our businesses by burdening our administrative operations and putting a financial strain on our bottom line. I think most of us already have automated time clocks. The paper part is no longer present, so that would not really help us. Because our business is much more unpredictable than any other industry in the city, under this legislation, we would often be paying predictability pay to our employees. Doing so will impact our profitability, and as a result, our room rates may go up, and suddenly we are less competitive with the hotels in the city that do not have to comply with this legislation because they are independently owned. Such increased expenses also means we would feel pressure from our owners to decrease expenses elsewhere, and that would be discretionary spending that we do. Like our many peers in our industry or many charitable contributions to the city and broader community, those expenses would have to be reviewed. This bill would also hurt our ability to be competitive in our bids to increase tourism and group bookings. The Philadelphia hotel industry has experienced moderate growth since the recession, but according to tourism economics, our growth is being outpaced by comparable cities, including Washington, D.C., and Boston, as well as the U.S. overall. Our industry is highly competitive both between hotels in the city and with other cities as we vie for group and leisure bookings. If we continue to put constraints on hotel abilities to manage their own workforce and budgets, our city may fall further behind and make us less competitive in the overall market. It's one of the reasons why all the other cities do not have hotels in their legislation.
All right, Ms. Delvecchia, if I could ask you to wrap up, please.
Two paragraphs.
Okay.
Just about done.
Just quickly, please.
Thank you.
Please.
Another concern is that we will strain our current administrative staff due to the extensive record keeping necessitated by this bill. Many of us hire additional staff person or redeploy other employees to fulfill these administrative duties to keep the records and track each and every shift change. This is yet another way the bill will wreak havoc with our ability to budget our hotel operations. Ultimately, answer to the owners of my hotel, and I have to explain and account for even the smallest shifts in expected margins. If ownership groups start to see slipping margins, they may decide to direct improvement funds and future investments to other markets that have more favorable business conditions. Hotels are completely different, is a different business model than any other. We're open 24/7 with a standard of service where we strive for as close to perfection at all possibility times. There are reasons why no other city in the country has included hotels, again, when they pass predictive scheduling legislation. This bill might make sense for some industries, but the arguments for it certainly do not apply to the hotel business, and we ask that you please amend hotels out of the legislation. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And patience.
Thank you. Ma'am, please identify yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Christina Vance, and I'm the Vice President of Store Operations for PetSmart. If you're not aware, PetSmart is the largest pet specialty retailer in the country with over 55,000 associates, as well as a significant investment in Pennsylvania, having one of our distribution centers here in Pennsylvania, 57 stores across the state, and 6 stores right here in the city. As a result, we closely follow policies that could impact our business and store operations, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify. Of those 178 associates that we have here in Philadelphia, they call PetSmart their workplace and made a decision to join PetSmart because of their passion and love for pets, as well as our employee-friendly culture, benefits, and flexibility. Over the last 30 years, we have continually made changes to our business practices to support our associates while also meeting the daily needs of our business. I'm sure you know that schedule and hours for an associate are influenced by a variety of factors, including the needs of the store, the position and the job they have to do, as well as the specific training that they have, and of course, an associate's own availability. That said, at PetSmart, we work diligently with our associates to support their personal commitments by making schedule adjustments as needed. While many other retailers and businesses will focus on the merits of predictive scheduling, we won't do so. At PetSmart, we provide 10 days notice on schedules, so that's not an issue that we need to deal with, and the majority of scheduling changes within that time frame are actually dictated by associate requests themselves. We'll be focusing on select operational challenges of enforcing the bill as it's written at the moment. In reviewing the bill, we see a few obstacles with operational compliance that, if modified, could still make for a very fair workweek policy for all of the residents of Philadelphia. In reference to section 94509, subsection 1, it states that it is presumed that the employer has violated the chapter absent clear and convincing evidence otherwise. We think that this misses the symbolic nature of the relationship that we try to cultivate with our associates. PetSmart stores would not operate without our qualified associates, and we're able to attract our talented associates because we do everything we can to try to accommodate their schedules within the business that we are trying to run. The presumption of the statute is inconsistent with this approach to scheduling. We diligently work with jurisdictions across the country in all areas of compliance, and the presumption of guilt should not be the starting point for any proposed legislation. We respectfully request that that wording be removed. Additionally, with regard to section 94511, 2 years is an extreme amount of time to collect complaints to be filed. By that time, we have lost nearly all opportunity to internally collect and retain pertinent information about the complaint, and more importantly, to use the situation as a teachable moment for store leaders. PetSmart associates are sometimes with us for a short amount of time, such as seasonal associates, college students, or associates who work between other jobs. It would be an incredible challenge for us to collect data and course correct after 2 years have passed and some of those associates are no longer with us. We would recommend 90 days as a much shorter time frame so that we can collect the information when it is most readily available and top of mind for all of those who are involved. Lastly, as it relates to changes in schedule, if schedules are modified after the advance notice period required by the bill, it requires written consent according to section 94603. At PetSmart, we work to streamline our business processes and have found that verbal consent has always worked for our business. Additional paperwork required by written consent and the retention of those records causes additional unnecessary steps. Our position is that verbal consent is validated by the employee showing up for their shift, and that should be considered sufficient. As I mentioned before, PetSmart has invested in the Philadelphia community and Pennsylvania at large, and we're working to provide our associates not only a great workplace culture, but also to have opportunities for growth. Any obstacles to these goals would hurt the residents of the city. And we thank you for your time today in considering the changes that we've suggested, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I think we have one more person, Mr. Holland, right? Okay, please. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Howell, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Retailers Association. Very much appreciate the opportunity to come before you today, as well as the other members of the council. I would just like to start by saying that the business community, and there's been a lot of discussion earlier about the coalition has offered numerous amendments. In fact, there are 5 core issues of which those amendments revolve around. And unfortunately, the amendments that you're going to be considering today do not address any of those core issues. We're very troubled by that fact. In fact, I believe that the amendments that are being offered today make the bill actually worse. So I think we're heading in the wrong direction. We do appreciate Councilwoman Jim's openness and willingness to meet with us and discuss our concerns, as well as all the members. I think we've met with every member of the council, several repeatedly. So we're very appreciative of the offer to discuss those concerns. Unfortunately, we feel those are, at this moment, are falling on deaf ears. None of the amendments being considered address any of the core issues that we brought forth to the council. So at the bottom line is, the amendments, the bill as it stands right now, does not offer any balance between predictability and flexibility. The predictability pay penalizes employers for many situations that are out of their control. And this also interferes and will interfere with our ability to hire new employees. And one of the things I think is most troubling, and I think it's part of the new amendments, this is creating several new liabilities for businesses that will clearly lead to frivolous lawsuits. And it will allow third parties to file civil actions, and that's quite troubling in that regard. The bottom line is owners and store managers are in the best position to understand and respond to the needs of their employees and the community. The legislation of scheduling practices will take time, attention, and resources away from managers' duties to train, to coach, to hire, and to lead. And Councilman I think you were starting to get on this point earlier. As consumers shop and access goods and services through multiple channels, including in-store, online, and on their mobile phones, Philadelphia retailers will be further disadvantaged by this bill. Online retailers without any physical presence may sell to city residents and avoid all compliance with this new regulation. Enacting this proposed bill will disadvantage Philadelphia store owners and the jobs that they provide our residents. A healthy and vibrant economy in the city of Philadelphia and in the Commonwealth as a whole is dependent upon a healthy and vibrant retail industry, and unfortunately, we feel this will have a significant negative effect on the industry, and we'd appreciate if you would reconsider the legislation.
Thank you. Ms. Hobb, let me just say, not to be argumentative here and might want to move on, but I hear that owners and business owners have the best ideas about how to run things, but there's a lot of ones that don't run quite right, and we've heard from workers. I heard that when I did sick leave. Well, let the business owners figure this out. But, a lot of them wasn't figuring it out fairly. And the title of this bill is Fair Work Rate, and we're trying to find a fairness. And just to say, don't do it, we're not going to not just do it. We're going to figure something out.
If I may respond.
Now, again, this is tough. I think it's probably unfair to just dismiss all those amendments that Councilwoman Gim is putting in. She can speak for herself, and just to dismiss them, they don't deal with the subject and make it harder. I don't think that's fair. I sat through some of the meetings she had. Everybody could give a different idea about what makes this bill perfect, and probably there'd be 85 different opinions. But to just say don't do it, well, I'll speak for myself. I reject that. We're going to do something here, and even if we pass this bill. And even if we pass this bill out of committee today, that's not the end of it. There still can be more work. Sponsor and others have pledged that we're going to keep working on this. But I don't think she went through all this, and the rest of us that worked on this went through this just to say no. You know, we're going to do something. And I'll just put that on record. For the hotel, pardon me?
May I respond to that?
Go ahead.
My point, Mr. Chairman, is that the business community put together a significant amount of amendments, suggested amendments, and none were taken into consideration. And in fact, the amendments that have been offered up are making the bill worse. And it's put in
Well,
some
that's
new
your
things.
opinion. That's your opinion, I know.
But have been put in additional issues that were never addressed or discussed with any members of council. In any meetings I was with, and I've talked to some of the other coalition members, issues that were never brought up, that have now been put in amendments that we received on Friday night. And it's making the bill worse. All I'm asking is the business community has come to the table, has offered very reasonable amendments to this legislation. None of that has been taken into consideration, and in fact, more amendments have been placed that make the bill worse.
Okay, that's your opinion, and the people have different opinions on that. On the hotels, let me just ask a real quick question. I know Councilman O has a question. Now, I understand the state of Oregon is much different from the city of Philadelphia, and I know they do include hotels, am I correct? And I have been told, and they have not done it yet, but that New York City is considering including hotels in legislation. I'd like to see if there is some place, and I understand hotels are different. I hear everything you're saying. You make some good points. And the hotels, I think we got great hotels in the city. But one of the reasons I think we have great hotels is because there's great employees in those hotels. And I guess I just ask you to consider if there's some kind of middle ground where we understand the differences that hotels have, the uniqueness maybe, but we also understand the needs of workers in those hotels. So I just throw that out there. I just ask you to keep considering that, and again, just not say, no, we don't want to be included at all, that maybe there is a place, and I'm not sitting here today saying I know what that place is, but that there is a place where hotels can be, and the workers in those hotels can be part of that legislation.
Can
I think you want to say
respond?
something.
Well, first, I think all of us agree with you. What makes our hotels great are our associates. They are the rock of what we exist for and why we do what we do. I think we would be very much.
Yeah, okay, all right.
We would be very much agreeable to talk about if there's ways we can change the bill so that it works for the hotel too, as well as our great associates.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. Okay, I appreciate it very much. I know Councilman O has a question. I know we still want to move on because a lot of people still here to testify. Please, Councilman O.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I received a letter yesterday.
Yes.
I'm going to read it in part. It's from the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. It says, "We have been negotiating in good faith on the language that was originally introduced and are disappointed that not only were our amendments not considered, but broad new provisions were included in the released amendment that were never part of previous conversations." Is this what you're referring to? Are you referring to the same language in this letter, that the negotiations have not been, in your opinion, in good faith, and that new amendments were introduced that you were not a party to at a late date, like yesterday?
That's correct. We received some amendments on Friday.
What are the issues that you have with those amendments? Quite frankly, I haven't seen them either.
We have, well, hopefully the business
They were
coalition-
distributed. Let me not say that they weren't distributed. They were distributed. This is a very, very complicated piece of legislation. It's very bureaucratic.
And the Business Coalition has provided the council members with a multiple page chart here that tracks the issues that have been from day one, as well as some of the new additional.
If these amendments are included in the bill, if you're able to discuss them, and from what I've heard from the administration, they have testified that they believe there's room for conversation. Is that something that you're looking for, or does it not matter? In other words, the bill is no good, or the bill is okay with the amendments? What is it you're...
I'm not entirely sure if I'll ever get complete consensus from my membership to support the bill, but I do know you can definitely have a more workable product developed. And,
Okay.
And the business
Okay.
community has offered very reasonable amendments, suggested amendments with language that were not, I can't characterize it any better
I
than
got the
they're
point.
extremely reasonable.
Let me quickly move on, because I feel the pressure from the
And could
chairman.
make the bill
He's
workable.
saying,
I
hurry
mean,
up. Let me
It would
ask you
make it
this.
much more palatable.
We've heard from workers, we've heard from advocates, we've heard from academics. What they've basically said is that you are exercising a business practice that is not really based in intelligence. You're just doing something you always do, and with the help of software, your business will be better with predictive scheduling. I will say, so you don't have to go through this, I do object to all these penalties and presumptions of guilt and all that. Extremely unusual. It's really not even, in my opinion, like the basis of American law. Rebuttable presumption, 2 years, city running lawsuits, all kind of crazy stuff in there. However, that's my opinion, Chairman. But having said that, what is your response to the fact that you can just use software, do the predictive scheduling, and that you don't have to follow these outdated business practices? Why can't you just adopt the software and then move along with this?
So we use predictive scheduling software. For us, it's not an issue of that. It's an issue, and he used the language of balancing predictability with flexibility, right? Because flexibility for one person who might, my daughter gets sick and I need to be out to take her to the doctor, that impacts all the other workers in the store. We don't have, in our case, we have a position that's required to feed animals in the morning. If you have an emergency, we absolutely want to work around you, but whatever happens with your shift, it's a domino effect, and it impacts other people. So I think, we use predictive scheduling software. As I said, we post schedules 10 days out. For us, it's not an issue of that. It's an issue of allowing us the flexibility within there, because there are so many circumstances that are unpredictable, frankly, right? Between the other associates who all create a domino effect, and you only have so many who are trained for particular jobs, as well as things like in the retail industry, we have, trucks that come in at 3 a.m. We're relying on trucking companies that have to deal with weather or with the stop before us, because you have multiple stores on a truck, and maybe at that store the forklift was broken and it delayed them. And so now they're delayed getting to our store, right? So it's a domino effect of things that aren't always in our control. That's the issue, I think, with the punitive nature of some of this when things are beyond our control.
So I do take what you say seriously. You are the employers that are speaking at this point in time. If anybody else has anything to say, please say it now, and then we'll wrap this panel up.
If I just can on that one point, please. Retail is one of the most competitive industries that exist. And unfortunately, you've seen a lot of major brand names disappear in recent years because of that competitive nature. And I can tell you, if a retailer can find efficiencies and run their business in the most effective manner possible, they're going to. So to say that, just do this computer program and it's the cure for everything, it's just simply not the case. One of the things that a retailer can control, that's in their control, is their labor force. And so there always is a big focus on that. But this, as was mentioned, we need the predictability, we need the flexibility to provide that, to remain competitive.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming. Ms. Marconi, our next panel of witnesses, please.
Wendell Young, Donna Cooper, and Anna Ship.
start without Donna. Please, whoever would like to go first. Please identify yourself and proceed. Thank you.
Councilman Greenlee and members of City Council, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to testify on this very important topic of improving work standards for employees here in the City of Philadelphia. We're very excited to see action taken on this legislation and fully support Councilwoman Gibbs' efforts in this process. We believe the latest amended version of Councilwoman Gibbs' legislation is a compromise that will greatly improve the quality of work for tens of thousands of Philadelphians. My name is Wendell Young. I'm president of UFCW Local 1776 Keystone State. We are a 35,000-member union representing employees in food processing, manufacturing, healthcare facilities, the Pennsylvania wine and spirits shops, public sector jobs including nursing homes, as well as convenience stores and others in retail, grocery, and pharmacy. We represent members across the entire state of Pennsylvania, and our international union represents 1.3 million workers, most of whom are employed in retail. Here in Philadelphia, our union represents 8,000 members employed primarily in retail work sites. In terms of our Philadelphia membership, we represent employees at Acme Market, ShopRite, Rite Aid, Fresh Grocer, and our state's wine and spirits stores, working at 158 locations here in Philadelphia. In those 158 locations, we represent full-time and part-time retail employees who all have different stories and backgrounds. Retail grocery jobs are often perceived as a teenager's first job, a possible side gig to make a little extra cash, or a extra income for someone who recently retired from the workforce. But in reality, for many of our members, these jobs have turned into full careers with livable wages, a fair health care package, and retirement security. Our members are proud of the work they do and the service they provide to all Philadelphians by ensuring they are real and quality grocery and retail options across every section of the city. Because of our union's commitment to collectively bargain the best contracts possible to benefit our members who are employed in represented work sites, we are very excited to lend our support and advice to efforts that would advance fair scheduling legislation to help lift all retail workers in the city of Philadelphia. Many of the concepts discussed around better scheduling practices would lift up the working standards for retail employees in the city. The economic benefits are clear, but so are the ideas of investing in this city's workforce, their families, and their livelihoods. Philadelphia employees, especially those who work for big box retail employers that continue to grow and expand in the city, should demand this legislation be considered so that there is a shared responsibility with their employer for more predictability in their own schedules. I would like to point to Walmart and their business practices as an example of why these legislative efforts are important here in the city. As many know, Walmart is the largest employer in the United States at about 1.4 million workers. Here in the city of Philadelphia, 5 Walmart or Walmart supercenters exist. Walmart has a long history of low wages, little health care, and unfair work practices. In 2014, for example, Walmart terminated health insurance for about 30,000 workers in this country, reducing the hours below 30 hours a week to ensure that they did not have to cover their part-time associates. How did Walmart reduce hours yet keep the same level of store operations in their work site? Temporary workers. Walmart proudly boasts about their commitment to hiring temporary workers instead of providing decent, permanent, full and part-time positions. This is directly from Walmart's website. Walmart invests, this is the quote from their website, Walmart invests heavily in temporary associates, and that one of our primary goals is to temporary services. This is a great example of why concepts of fair scheduling legislation, such as additional hours offered to part-time employees before new hires are made, are incredibly important to improve the standards of all retail workers. This legislation will provide a level playing field, I would say a more level playing field, so that employers who are providing adequate scheduling notice and doing their best to help their employees maximize hours are not put at a disadvantage of competing with large retail powerhouses who are not scheduling their employees with a level of fairness and advance notice. I would like to close by reiterating that this is about fairness for workers and a level playing field for employers that are doing the right thing. I can speak to the members I represent and tell you that we fight hard through collective bargaining to provide them with a schedule that is fair and that cannot be adjusted on them at the last minute. Our contracts protect against this type of unfair practice of switching an employee's schedule with little or no notice or reducing hours at the last minute. Our members know their work schedule and can budget their time and income and family needs appropriately. But as we continue to see the growth of big box retailers that clearly have the means and resources to open new stores in areas of the city and are not investing in their employees at the same level, we also see a race to the bottom. These scheduling concepts provide that level playing field that is so needed for workers and employers in Philadelphia. UFCW Local 1776 wholeheartedly supports those efforts, and I would be happy to answer any questions. I'd like to cover a few things that are not in those.
Okay, if we can quickly, please,
I
because
will.
we still have a lot of people testifying.
I was here for most of the earlier testimony, although I had to step out and miss some of what the folks from the last panel had to say. But I've heard a few things here today. First of all, the technology that exists today that all these retailers are using gives them a lot of predictability. This is not like it was 20, 30 years ago where retailers really don't know what to expect day to day. Sure, there's some variances, and that's the nature of the business, but their budgets are built in weeks and months in advance. They predict ahead way beyond a week or two on what their scheduling needs are going to be, and they have the capacity and the capability in the current technology to do the right thing here and meet the needs of this. By not changing this, to allow the status quo to continue, this just keeps people poor and working in the poverty level, and it disproportionately affects women and people of color. You know, these same employers who come here and tell you that they can't adjust the minimum wage and tell you they can't do this, act a lot differently out in the suburbs. And I heard one city council person say earlier that maybe this would create a jobs problem here in Philadelphia, or ask the question, would it? Well, I would suggest that we would have reverse border bleed, because right now, people who want something better will go out to King of Prussia, to Bucks County, to Chester County, to Delaware, across the river and pay the toll to go to some of those shopping centers not far out of Philadelphia, 15 minutes down the road, because the hourly wages at start rate are so much higher. And if the scheduling here in Philadelphia was better, because I don't think they take it out on those suburban people the way they do here in Philadelphia. They are a lot more accommodating there. And evidence of it is, I went to that meeting at Bill Sasso's office that he and Pat Eiding had. I sat at a table with a number of major retailers. Others I know at the other tables reported the same thing I heard. Everything's fine. They're already doing what's in this bill and more. It's the way they practice. I would suggest to you that in most of the suburban counties, they do. In Philadelphia, they do not. And if they're already doing it, then this bill shouldn't be a problem. They know how to do it. They claim they're doing it. Let's get to it and hold them accountable.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Young. Donna,
this is not anti-business. This is pro-worker, and it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Donna Cooper. I'm the Executive Director of Public Citizens for Children and Youth, and I want to thank the committee and the committee chair for his patience in running an efficient hearing and giving me the chance to testify. Our reason to be here today is to first thank the 8 sponsors of the bill and to urge a yes vote coming out of this committee. I will be very brief. We are only here because we believe that when parents have a work schedule, they can be good parents, and when they're good parents, they're good workers. In the prior testimony, we pointed out that 66% of the people in the service sector don't have schedules already, I apologize, and 40% of them already have schedules 2 weeks in advance. There are lots and lots of employers in the service sector that are already doing this, and the ones who aren't are behind the times. It costs $1,500 for every worker turnover in the retail sector, and yet, you heard earlier today you could drive down your turnover rate from 6% to 1% by being respectful of your employers and doing predictable scheduling. Employers will save money by using this kind of scheduling software and being respectful of their employees. Before coming here today, I spoke with the HR professionals that I know informally with a big box store, a big box food retailer, and a big box manufacturer/retailer, all operating in Philadelphia. One that's national said, we have no problem with this happening in Philly. We already have to do it in so many other cities. As long as things are uniform, it's better for us. But they are already putting scheduling software in place in one of the biggest electronic sales companies in this city. One of our biggest food companies already asked their managers to do 1-month schedules. What they say to me, Councilman Greenlee and Councilman O, is that their biggest challenge isn't asking their managers to give employees schedules. It is the shortage of qualified workers that is making scheduling challenging for them. And if we could do a better job in delivering workers through our workforce system, they have no problem with doing 2 weeks, let alone 1 month of scheduling. And the final industry, which is a locally owned retailer that has multiple locations in Philadelphia, said they already do it. They are a Philadelphia company, they are growing, and they do it with scheduling software. So, I think that the question of people being able to say that this is a cost to businesses will save money by decreasing turnover. But the more important question for us here is the loss of childcare resources. When parents do not have predictable childcare work schedules, they can't have predictable childcare. It costs them money. One worker already talked about being late, but you can't maintain your state subsidy for childcare if your hours fluctuate radically weekly by week. We say to poor people, go get a job. That's the pathway out of poverty. For those mothers, they can't do that without childcare. So PCCY says being a good worker and a good parent is good for business, and that's what this bill enables. Please vote yes.
Thank you. Ms. Schitt.
Thank you. Apologies for being late. Chair Greenlee and Vice Chair Green and members of the committee, thank you for having me here today to speak in support of Bill 180649. My name is Anna Schitt, and I'm the Executive Director of the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia. SBN is a community of locally owned, independently held businesses who practice every day the triple bottom line. Every day our members implement policies and practices that prove a business can be successful while providing strong benefits to their employees and communities and protecting the environment. SBN brings together these business leaders to exchange learnings and best practices and to advocate in favor of a just, green, and thriving economy in our region. Fair Workweek policies provide benefits to both employers and employees. Research has shown that businesses who implement these policies have seen higher profits, reduced turnover, lower rates of absenteeism, and improved worker performance. An example from the Center for Popular Democracy, the 19 Gap stores that participated in a study on stable schedules earned an additional $2.9 million in revenue over an 8-month period and increased sales by an average of 7%, which is 3 more times the average yearly sales increase that most retailers aim for. And they also saw a 5% increase in labor productivity. Stable employees are happy employees, and they work harder and they stay longer. Another study found that providing employees with enough hours to live on significantly reduced turnover, which to your point can also cost businesses 20% of annual pay. Employees who have a say in the development of their schedules are compensated fairly for short-term changes in schedule, and who are allowed to adequately rest between shifts are more engaged, healthier, and perform better than those do not. As the poorest big city in this country, it is critical that we implement policies that support an equitable and inclusive economy. When employers treat workers as the assets they are, businesses, workers, and our economy all benefit. Businesses today have the resources necessary to shift to Fair Workweek scheduling, and more importantly, there are clear economic benefits for both workers and employers. And again, we see this every day within our membership. I commend the committee for taking action on this important legislation and urge you to vote in favor of this bill and help us take one more step towards the just, green, and thriving economy of our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for testifying. Thank you for your patience and hanging in there. I know it's been a long day. Appreciate it. Ms. Marconi on next panel, please.
Tasha Jenkins or Teresa Manley from Wendy's, I'm not sure which one is here.
I think they are.
Xavier Velez or Alicia Colon from Wendy's, not sure who's here. Brian Hastings.
Any of those names here? Okay, you want to come forward, please?
Good afternoon.
Wait a minute. How many people we have here? I think it was a Tasha Denkins or Teresa Manley, right?
Well, we're from Wendy's.
Huh?
I guess they called
Okay.
Wendy's first. Oh.
I mean, we've been trying to get every organization to have one speaker, in all fairness, and I wanted to be fair to the other people that we only allowed one to, so
Xavier, you
I think we really only, if we can have one from Wendy's and one from Aramark, I think we want to be fair, okay? All right? Whoever would like to speak.
You speak.
Whoever would like to do that. Because again, I cut other people and saying they could not, we could have a whole lot of people come up here from the same group, so please.
Okay.
Please identify yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Xavier Veliz. As a general manager of the Wendy's restaurant located in Queens Village, New York, I have faced many challenges in our business regarding the new restricted scheduling law that was passed in New York City last year. I work side by side daily with my entire crew team and management team together and have met our business goals and personal growth goals. However, as of November 26, 2017, the scheduling law was put into effect and a lot of things has changed and have hurt employee morale and the flexibility of our operation and our entire team. Before this law, we had a flexible family culture and environment in our restaurants. If a crew member needed to change their schedule, they could call in advance, speak to a manager, and the manager could make a change to their schedule. They could also swap a shift with a fellow crew member and advise management of the change. And then management would update the schedule. Now with the new law, crew members cannot be flexible with their schedule and cannot make any changes at last minute. In case of an emergency, it causes more challenges regarding scheduling and making sure that the crew member have their required hours for the week. I had an employee who was worried about being late for her shift because of the scheduling law. She was running late for work when a police officer pulled her over and gave her a ticket. She came into the work crying because she was speeding, so she wouldn't clock in late and get a notation, which breaks my heart. She couldn't have worried about being a few minutes late for her shift will result in a write-up. I really feel that instead of protecting our crew members, it is making things worse for them. We have similar stories of high school students and crew members who don't know in advance when appointments or school activities will arise. Per the restricted scheduling law, a schedule needs to be made 3 weeks in advance. Sometimes our crew members have to miss their appointments or activities because they know they are responsible to work the shift that are scheduled. Now my employees feel that they are working on the obligation rather than being flexible. Flexible scheduling in a family environment boosts morale and limits turnover. Prior to this new law, I was able to hire part-time college students and part-time high school students, but now that group of potential candidates is no longer available. I sometimes feel bad for those students that we had working for us, and I know are academically doing well in school, and they are trying to help their parents with putting in a Friday or a Saturday day of work, because those are the only days it can be done in order to maintain their grades. The New York law now has limited our ability to keep those teammates previously hired employed. I know when I was starting this business, I was a student working part-time for 3 years while attending college. That was the only way for me to have extra money to pay for books, clothes, and lunch money. Students need this job, but they also need flexibility, and the law doesn't allow us to give them that anymore. The work environment is no longer a family fun place to work. Not only is scheduling a concern, there is so much documentation and paperwork that has to be done on a daily basis. Documentation is required for every situation, for lateness, for schedule change, for staying past your scheduled time, for wanting to leave early due to bad weather or being able to come into work because of bad weather, for being sick, for leaving due to emergency. Any changes to the crew member schedule require documentation and signature from the crew member. More workload and pressure are added, and we are faced with the possibility of losing that great teammates. We now have a city law that prevents employers from making last-minute decisions for the well-being of their staff. Management will get penalized for adjusting or calling someone into work in order to relieve pressure and stress from those that are being valuable and loyal to their job. The restricted scheduling has been extremely hard to manage. Teammates don't feel the need to work many hours anymore, which has increased the number of called out and requests to leave early, and management has to document these changes, which require more paperwork. The crew members feel as though they are being tired of their job and jeopardy. Management has explained the law over and over and how it is a company policy but New York law, but the crew members do not see it this way. Our organization has a culture and is being jeopardized by this new law. My personal opinion is that business will not survive with this new restricted law, so our crew members working in this tense atmosphere will seek other employments. It is my hope that Philadelphia learns from these mistakes that have been made in New York City. Our crew members have found that the law has made their life worse, not better. We've lost many good teammates because while they enjoy working with us, they needed more flexibility with their schedule, and we're no longer allowed them to give them that. Council has an opportunity to improve this bill and make it better for businesses that operate in the city and for workers who want the flexibility to set or change their schedule based on their things that come up in their life. I hope our crew members in Philadelphia will not have to deal with the problems that the law has created for our teammates in New York.
Thank you. Who wants to represent Aramark? Okay, please. Again, I want to be fair to everybody and have one representative from each group, because some of the groups we had earlier could have sent about 10 people up here, but, we try to work it out. Please, sir. Identify yourself and proceed.
Sure. Good afternoon, Chairman. I'm Brian Hastings, District Manager at Aramark, with responsibility for Citizens Bank Park, Lincoln Financial Field, Wells Fargo, and the Pennsylvania Convention Center. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Bill number 180649. Aramark is one of the many businesses that has been engaged with Councilwoman Jim on the proposed legislation since May. Aramark has participated in multiple business roundtable discussions and meetings with Councilwoman Jim and other members of council. Aramark has not tried to prevent passage of the bill, even though it will be costly and administratively difficult for Aramark to comply with it in any form. Instead, working with the PRLA, fellow Chamber of Commerce members and others, Aramark has offered constructive amendments.
Excuse me. Please, all right? Pretty obvious what you're trying to do. Remember, I can stop the hearing anytime. Sir, please.
These amendments acknowledge and preserve the bill's core goals while balancing compliance, negative impacts to employees, and operations. At every one of these roundtable meetings and events, Aramark has raised the need for a ticketed events exception to the bill. Language implementing such an exception was included in the proposed amendments that the business community coalesced around and provided to council. A ticketed event exception is not unprecedented. The recently enacted Oregon predictive scheduling law contains just such an exception. In contrast, Seattle's secure scheduling law does not contain the exception, and I think Aramark's experience in the city is important for the committee to understand as it considers the bill. I would like to share with you the significant difficulties that my counterpart with responsibilities for the Seattle sports and entertainment market has faced since the city has passed a very similar law. In Seattle, Aramark provides services at many NCAA sporting events. The start times of these events are not always announced 14 days in advance. Because we must post schedules 14 days in advance, however, we have to guess at the timing of the events. When we guess wrong, which is most of the time, we owe every employee working that event an hour of predictability pay. Similarly, when an event runs longer than scheduled, for example, a football game going into overtime, we must send folks running through the stadium to secure written consent from each employee to stay longer. Then we have to pay each employee who chooses to stay an hour of predictability pay. It is a huge administrative, operational, and financial burden. There's another group of employees who have been hurt in Seattle and will be hurt in Philadelphia if the bill passes in its current form. Employees who want to work more hours. This is ironic because perhaps they are the primary group both laws were intended to help. In Seattle, we are now forced to staff every covered event location from a Huskies football game to a museum gift shop as leanly as possible. Before the law passed, if business was strong, everyone benefited. If business was slow, we would respond by giving some people the option to go home early. Because of the predictability pay requirements, however, that is no longer a realistic option financially. Now, on busy days, customer service and revenue suffer. Employees miss out on shifts they once would have worked and their short-staffed coworkers have to work harder. Similarly, before the law passed, we would often allow employees eager for more hours to stay later than scheduled and help after an event. Now we have to turn those employees down because an extra hour at the end of an event actually costs us 2 hours of pay. As the Councilwoman proposed to amend it on Friday, Bill number 180649 will have the same negative impact on sporting events in Philadelphia. Business reality is that we will be forced to staff more leanly to avoid predictability pay. This would be a particular irony because Ironmark's thousands of workers at the stadium have already negotiated their own solution to scheduling through their unions. The collective bargaining agreements between Ironmark and those employees addresses the unique aspects of our business and strikes a balance between Ironmark's operation and the needs of its employees. If we send an employee at the stadium's home earlier than scheduled because business is slow, he or she is still guaranteed to be paid for a full shift. When a Phillies game is canceled within 2 hours of game time, our employees still receive 2.5 hours of pay. Our employees at the Wells Fargo Center are allowed to call out from scheduled shift for any reason or no reason up to 9 times per season with no consequences. These are only a few of the examples of protections built into our CBAs after many rounds of careful negotiations. It doesn't make any sense to throw out this custom-built solution in favor of a one-size-fits-all approach. In closing, I would ask the committee to carefully consider not just the goals of the bill, which are admirable. Please consider the actual mechanics of it and the unintended consequences those mechanics will have. Ironmark and the business community have been careful consideration to these consequences, and the amendments presented to Council by the PRLA do much to mitigate them while preserving the primary aims of the bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Bill 180649.
Mr. Higgins, just one quick question. So what you're asking for is the ticketed events to be taken out of the law? Is that basically
That's one of the amendments we're asking to be addressed, yes.
And that would be the thing that would affect Aramark, right?
I'm sorry?
That would be the issue that would affect Aramark the most, the ticketed events?
It's a serious one, but there's others in other lines of business that would also impact Aramark.
Okay, as I said, if this bill passes out of committee, there's still time to talk about other things. And, I understand what you're saying, but you're trying to find that balance, as you know. So, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Ms. Marconi, I think this is our last panel.
Vanessa Fields, Dr. Nina Ahmad, and Arika Hurst.
So this will be our final panel to testify, and we'll be going into a public meeting, okay? Yeah, right, really. Ms. Fields, I think your name is called first. You'd like to go first, or whoever, right?
Oh, okay.
At this point. And I appreciate your patience. I know it's been almost 3 hours, but, we're trying to move it fast as we can and still get folks to get their point across. So please, Ms. Fields, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to wake up.
You mean we haven't kept you awake over there?
Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Fields, and I am speaking on behalf of the Philadelphia Commission for Women, where I am a commissioner and the co-chair of the Policy and Advocacy Committee. I also represented the commission at the public hearing regarding this legislation, and the commission sponsored a town hall meeting last week regarding this topic. So as you can see, the commission clearly supports this very important piece of legislation. The Philadelphia Commission of Women is charged with promoting civic, educational, and economic policies for women and providing advice and recommendations to the mayor and city council on policies and programs that advance equal rights and opportunities for women in the city. Unstable work schedules primarily impact women and their children. The Commission thanks Councilwoman Gim for her leadership in crafting legislation that addresses unstable work schedules. There's been a lot of talk about Philly's increasing millennial population and its building boom. However, there's one title the city can't shake. Philly remains the poorest large city in the United States. Most of these poor households are headed by women. Most of these women work in retail, food service, and the hospitality industries. These industries are oftentimes low-paying jobs with unstable work schedules. Unstable work schedules exacerbates these women's ability to effectively address their own health needs, ability to parent effectively, and move out of poverty. This legislation will enable these women to manage their lives and hopefully move out of poverty. Imagine, manage their lives, something that you and I and others take for granted every day. These women would be able to manage their lives and develop a plan of out of poverty. They could obtain their GED, a college degree, or other training that would enable them to obtain a better paying job. So, City Council members, if you are sincere in addressing poverty in Philly, if you want to get rid of the stigma of Philly being the largest poor city in America, you will support, endorse, vote favorably on this legislation that addresses unstable work schedules. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ahmad?
Good afternoon. Thank you, City Council members, two of you, for the opportunity to testify today on Bill number 180649. My name is Nina Ahmed, and I'm the former president of the Philadelphia chapter of the National Organization for Women, known as NOW, and currently a board member of the National Board of NOW. As a grassroots arm of the women's movement, NOW is dedicated to its multi-issue and multi-strategy approach to women's rights and is the largest organization of feminist grassroots activists in the United States. NOW advocates for a wide range of economic justice issues affecting women, including welfare reform, livable wages, job discrimination, pay equity, housing, social security, and pension reform, and much more. Low wages can make it hard for workers to support themselves and their families, and increasingly women make up the majority of low-wage workers. However, wages are not the only problem. The collateral damage of low-wage work are the scheduling challenges and their consequences. The work schedule in these jobs are often unpredictable, unstable, and inflexible. Some require working nights, weekends, or even overnight, and many offer only part-time work, despite many workers' need for full-time hours. Women are disproportionately affected by this problem since they have significant responsibilities outside the job, including caregiving, pursuing education, workforce training, or holding down a second job. The unpredictable hours and volatile income has a deep impact on childcare, and it affects our most vulnerable Philadelphians, our babies. Low-wage workers' ability to access quality, affordable, and stable childcare is often compromised by challenging work schedules. With unpredictable weekly schedules, childcare becomes an ad hoc situation cobbled together at the last minute. Since many centers require caregivers to pay a weekly or monthly fee, regardless of how often the child attends, holding a spot in childcare centers is often infeasible for workers who do not know when or if they will work that week. Further, workers with unstable schedules may not qualify for childcare subsidies due to fluctuations in income and work hours. To qualify in Pennsylvania, parents must work 20 or more hours, or work 10 hours, or go to school for or training for 10 more hours. Relying on family, friends, and neighbors to provide childcare, as most workers in low-wage jobs must do, is complicated by the fact that the childcare providers may also be balancing an unpredictable part-time work schedule at their own jobs with providing childcare. In one study, 40 to 60% of workers who reported missing work due to childcare problems also reported losing pay or benefits or being penalized in some way. Unfortunately, many low-wage workers are not represented by unions, and until we make it easier to organize unions, legislation will be the route to improving working conditions for many low-wage service sector employees. Expanding hours for the underemployed is an important step towards helping more working Philadelphians move out of poverty. Although this legislation would help all low-wage workers, women and people of color would be primary beneficiaries. Women are still the primary caregivers of young children who makes the arrangements for childcare and medical care. Unpredictable schedules are a heavy burden for women trying to juggle work schedules. I would like to thank the sponsors of this bill, Councilwoman Gim, Heenan, Quinones, Sanchez, Squilla, Greenlee, Jones, Blackwell, and Johnson. I urge City Council to pass this bill and the mayor to sign it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst?
Good evening. My name is Arica Hurst, and I'm testifying on behalf of 1PA and also my sister, Symphony Hurst, who testified months ago at the press conference, but due to lack of unpredictable scheduling, she was called into work last minute, so I'm speaking on her behalf. I'm a community organizer for One Pennsylvania, so I would like to say that, and I'm talking to community members every day, and even my co-chair, who was co-chair of Southwest chapter, is unable to come to meetings and unable to come out because she doesn't get her schedule until the Sunday before her week starts. So I just want to speak to that as well. So my sister states here, I am one out of 73% of Philadelphia workers in this sector whose family experiences chronic stress from a result of my work schedule. Other than working, I couldn't live. I had no time to go to doctors because I was always trying to pick up more shifts to pay bills. If I didn't have enough money for childcare on a certain day, I couldn't go back to work, which obviously made the problem worse. I even tried to withhold information that I was a parent in job interviews. When employees hear that they have a mom employee, they side-eye her and assume that if they give her 50 or more hours, she won't be able to work. She won't be able to come into work because she has to take care of her child. But if moms like me got consistent hours, we could more adequately plan for whatever may come up with our children. Now, I am not a parent, but I've worked several retail positions, and I'm just here to say that from people that are speaking on behalf of college students, I needed a predictable schedule. I was working full-time and in school full-time. So for the people that stood here today and said that college students love flexibility, no, me and other college students who actually the first in our family to go to college are holding down 40 hours a week and also trying to balance a schedule in college. So actually college students need a schedule that they can rely on. So that makes no sense at all. Seeing my sister work hard endlessly and having to drop out of college to take care of my 5-year-old niece brought tears to my eyes because we both graduated from John Bartram High School and I was able to graduate from Temple University. And a lot of times having unpredictable scheduling cost me my jobs. I had to choose between going to class or going to work. Like I said, I graduated from John Bartram High School, a school that is still very much underfunded. So it was hard for me to even imagine going to college. A lot of people in the city of Philadelphia, across Southwest Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, and North Philadelphia, complain that they cannot come to community meetings because they don't get their schedule before the week that they have to work. So if they're trying to engage with their local electors, and if they're trying to come out to community meetings and find out about what is being voted on, they're unable to even come out to that because they don't know what their schedule is going to be. If we want to have a democratic society here in Philadelphia, and we want to have constituents who are up to date about what's going on, we have to support them in their work as well. So I just want to be here to say that as a community organizer, as someone who's talking to people every single day, people in Philadelphia want fair work week. So I will allow for the rest of my time to say, what do we want? What do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Thank you guys, and thank you all who have signed on to the bill, and I'm hoping that your colleagues will hear from you guys today and also vote yes.
Okay. All right, if there are no questions, thank you all. We have no other panelists. That will conclude our public hearing. I think we heard from a lot of people here today, okay, on both sides. We will go into a public meeting, and we're going to delay that meeting and hang in there, okay? We're going to try to work some things out here, okay? So we're now in a public meeting. Thank you. Yeah. Please. Trust me, I share your applause. As I stated earlier, we are in a public meeting of the Committee on Law and Government. For the record, we have a quorum with Councilman Green, Councilwoman Gim, Councilwoman Bass, Councilman O'Neill, and Councilman O, so we are well above the quorum level. That we have worked out some amendments, and I'm recognizing the sponsor, Councilwoman Gim, to describe briefly those amendments. Thank you.
Yes, okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody in this audience, and especially my colleagues, for working together to come up with a series of amendments that we believe maintain all the core protections of a solid and historic Fair Workweek bill here in the city of Philadelphia. All of those are still in place, and that there are modest changes that will not harm those core protections. Among the changes that are being recommended to the committee are a phase-in from up to 14 days, a limited change in exceptions for ticketed events. There's been a minor adjustment to the length of clopenings with still a strong protective measure in place. There are no broad-based exemptions within the bill, and that there is an exception for serious and documented disciplinary actions from predictability pay. I think with all of these amendments to the bill, I believe, first of all, I want to thank very seriously every single member of this committee. I absolutely want to thank especially Chairman Greenlee. I want to thank Council Majority Leader Bobby Heenan, Vice Chair Derek Green, Council Member Cindy Bass, Brian O'Neill, David O, and Curtis Jones Jr. for all being engaged and thoughtful about what is an appropriate bill that both protects our employers and their best practices, but fundamentally puts us a huge step forward in ensuring the rights of workers in the city of Philadelphia. And I want to thank everybody in this audience, and especially my colleagues who helped make this possible.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And kudos to everyone who has worked on this. Record will also reflect our Majority Leader, Councilman Heenan, is present. So you want to, oh, I'm sorry, somebody want to say something? No, okay, you want to do it, the amendment? Yeah. Okay. All right, Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Chairman Greenlee. These amendments have been circulated to all members of council. Members to Bill number 180649. I move that this bill be amended. Let me introduce the amendments first.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me introduce the amendments to Bill number 180649.
Second. It's been moved and seconded for the adoption of the amendments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendments are approved. Councilman Green?
I move that Bill number 180649 as amended be moved out of this committee with a favorable recommendation.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that the bill be reported out of this committee with a favorable recommendation. With no suspension. All in favor?
Aye.
Also, Councilman Jones should be recorded as voting aye as previously stated. Any opposed? Opposed? The record will reflect Councilman O'Neill and Councilman O vote in the negative. The majority voting favorably. Bill number 180649 as amended is reported out as committee with a favorable recommendation. Thank you, everybody. This concludes the hearing. So you have the amended copy, okay.